pledge allegiance. Your flag ain't my king. Yeah, let's talk about it. Street corner sermon, breathing out these truth vapors. See the system sending sons to die for the papers. Another war they made, another soul gets traded. While we building up a kingdom that is never faded. They draw the party lines, wanna know which side I'm taking. But the cross on my back is the only statement I'm making. Love your enemy, that's a revolutionary order. Wash the feet of the one who stands across the border. They got their thrones and their crowns, their empires of sand. But the kingdom of God is the ground where I stand. So when they beat the war drums and they ask for my hand, I say no king but Christ in this promised land. Check the posture.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the LCI Green Room. I'm Jacob Winograd, host of the Biblical Anarchy podcast, and I am your host for tonight, which can be a really great show. If you're watching live, thank you for being here. We'll make time for comments and super chats towards the end of the show, so stick around. A few housekeeping things to take care of here at the outset. First of all, I've been plugging this for, I feel like, over a year now, because it took longer than we expected, but the second edition to our flagship book, Faith Seeking Freedom, is going to be our updated and revised edition. That is getting very close to being available for pre-order and publication. And so we have a website up, which it should be up now. If it's not, like, check again at the end of the show. It should be up by then. But it is, we're having some technical difficulties there with the domain redirect. But it's faithseekingfreedom.com. And that's where you can check on the status of the publication and get kind of a little bit of a sneak preview of some of the new content and questions. And there's also like a, little community tab aspect to it as well to kind of talk about some of the topics in there. We're experimenting with some different things with the rollout of this book. It's very big for us. I think I've only recently started to plug this, but I have my own book in the works, and I'm still workshopping that title. But the tagline will be something along the lines of reclaiming the church's prophetic voice against war and empire. And it's basically just a sort of synthesis of biblical theology and church history and a study of the history and the application of just war theory, and then just sort of taking all that and evaluating America over the last 50, 100 years, especially today, and applying those standards to all that. And so that's a project I've been pouring a lot into. It's kind of the culmination of my entire podcasting and writing career, you might say. I'm really looking forward to that coming out later this year as well. We have a lot cooking here at LCI. We have other books that are in development as well. Make sure that you go to libertarianchristians.com, sign up for emails, consider becoming a LCI insider. If you go to libertarianchristians.com/donate and donate $10 or more a month, then you get all these special perks, including monthly insider calls where you can talk to me and others on our team. And for other updates, just follow us on social media at Biblical Anarchy for me, and at LCI Official for our main account. X is where we post most things. So I am super excited for our guest for tonight. But before we bring Dave up here, I just want to set the table a little bit. He recently appeared on the Piers Morgan show and debated Ben Ferguson. And what they talked about was kind of a perfect snapshot of a lot of the things we're going to get into tonight. So I'm going to go ahead and roll this clip for you guys.
Your foreign policy is fraud, Dave. Your foreign policy is bury your head in the sand, bother no one, and then no one bothers you. And when you're dealing with terrorists, that never works. 9/11's a great example of that.
We were non-interventionist until 9/11. Yeah, right, please. We were bombing Iraq. We had a sanctions regime around Iraq. We had military bases in Saudi Arabia.
We were asleep at the wheel on 9/11. There's a reason why John Ashcroft wrote a book called Never Again, because we were so asleep at the wheel.
You don't know what you're talking about. Madeleine Albright was asked about how the UN had estimated that 500,000 children had died of starvation and malnutrition due to the Clinton blockade paid around Iraq. She said, and I quote, "That price is worth it." What I believe is that we don't launch wars of aggression, wars of choice, reckless wars against countries that don't pose a threat to us. I'm defending the just war theory of Christianity and the constitutional system that the framers laid out.
And with that, the one and only Dave Smith. Dave, welcome back to the LCI Green Room. Good to have you, man.
Oh, thank you, my brother. It's good to be with you. This is my favorite Christian Green Room to attend. and let the record show I am wearing a slightly different gray hoodie than I was in that clip that you played. This one's got a zipper down the middle, just to be clear. Not the same one.
You're infamous now for showing up to serious topics in hoodies. It's it's like the failed comedian bit didn't work, right? And you haven't been there, hasn't worked. So now it's like they're really scraping the bottom of the barrel. It's like, oh, he shows up and wears hoodies.
Yeah, well, I like that. I like all of those. I like that all of those are the knock on me. Like, yes, that's right. I'm not a serious expert. I'm just a comedian. I'm not a suit and tie guy. It's like, okay, now still. So you should really be able to beat me in this debate now, right? But what do you have? Exactly. Can I just say, by the way, because it's just so funny to me that, so for people who don't know, if you don't watch the Piers Morgan show, I'm not blaming you for that. I understand why, although I do think it's kind of an important show. But so the setup to that debate, this is just how easy it is. The universe just like shines on people who are telling the truth. And there is something spiritual about that. But so me and Ben Ferguson had a big thing that caused like a big viral trending thing because I had said that the US government is the biggest terrorist organization in the world, which in our circles is a fairly mundane, like given, but in more mainstream circles, I guess that's still a controversial thing to say. But so he goes, "That's outrageous that you would say this, and you hate America and blah, blah, blah." And then when I debated the Adam guy, that was like a big topic. But you said America's a terrorist. And then me and Ben Ferguson go for a one-on-one debate. And the morning that we're getting ready for this debate, or the day before, the president of the United States of America had the Easter tweet where he literally says, "We're going to end civilization and send you back to the Stone Age," and then ends the tweet by saying, "Allah Akbar." And there's something just so funny about, like, imagine just that card being dealt, and then you still got to go in there and go like, yeah, but that's totally different than a terrorist. Ignore the praise be to Allah and the ending civilization. And, so I don't know, man, it's a wild time to be me. They're making it easy.
It is. And, I need to start with a serious concern of mine, which is that I thought you were against spanking and the corporal punishment of children, but I keep seeing you go on these panels and commit what I can only think is objectively described as an absolute smackdown of children pretending to be adults with informed worldviews and an understanding of U.S. foreign policy going back 50 years. So, like, do we need a peaceful parenting intervention here?
I get your point. It's a fair point, but I'm going to say, in the same way that I reject the trans nonsense, like, these are adults and they may identify as children, but these are adults. And so it doesn't count as spanking children. I fully believe in spanking war hawk adults, just not kids.
Oh gosh. It's just, some of these things, it's like, we were texting the other day. It was just like, it's like on one hand, there's just something about like seeing you just absolutely decimate people. On the other hand, I'm just like, it feels like when you're watching, like the WWE, and it's like, it can be entertaining, but then you're like, at the end of the day that like, it's fake, not even just fake, like it's scripted. It's like, these are men just fighting for entertainment, right? Like, they're not like fighting like because they actually want to kill each other. When you're doing these debates, it's like, oh wait, no, that's a real person who is like actually sincerely is deluded. Either they're deluded into thinking that's what they actually believe to be true, or they're absolute psychopaths and they're out there lying through their teeth in the most like unbelievable way, which is, so it's entertaining. And then it's, after you let it sit for a little bit, it's kind of disturbing. Like, these are the people who are, near the levers of power.
Yeah. That Ben Ferguson guy, he hosts a podcast with Ted Cruz. Not saying that's exactly that he has the levers of power, but he's like a senator's guy, and he will confidently just say to you, we weren't intervening at all before 9/11. And then I go, dude, the Clinton blockade and this killed all these people. And he goes, what was that, 20 years before 9/11? As if, by the way, as if that would make it like, Jacob, I killed one of your kids, but that was 20 years ago, dude. Oh, you're still hung up on that, dude? Like, yeah, I mean, it's not that would matter, but you're also like, no, dude, try 3 years before. What do you mean 20 years? But like, they don't. It's shocking how little people know, and that's why I don't have a problem with the knock on me being that I'm like a non-expert comedian or something, because that is true. But it's like, okay, fine, I'll take that knock. But then isn't that like what an indictment of this entire system then? How am I able to like rise as far as I've risen and just, objectively just wreck so many people in debates? But like, yeah, you're right. It's like, that's how fraudulent all of them are. That just a guy who's read Ron Paul's books can beat all of them, because all you got to do is read like 2 Ron Paul books before someone goes, we were non-interventionists before 9/11. You go, oh, well, that's just.
Well, see, Dave, what you don't realize is that we can go to war with Iran because of what we have not done. What they have not done for the past 30 years, which is, building a nuke. The entire, every year of my life, I think, because I'm almost 34 now. So I think almost every year of my life, Iran has been weeks away from building a nuke. But they haven't actually done that. And even our own intelligence said they didn't do it. But like, we can go to war against them for what they haven't done. But there's no conceivable way that bin Laden and his followers attacked America because of what the American government actually did do, despite the fact that some people don't know or pretend to don't know, for decades preceding 9/11, including the vicious sanctions campaign against Iraq. And what's funny about his whole objection to that was like, it's not like George Bush. That started with H.W. Bush, and then it's through the Clinton years, and then W. Bush keeps it going up until it's like, oh, we don't have to do a sanctioned regime. We're just going to invade the country and occupy it now. So it's
that's right.
It's not like there was a break at any point during that period where it was like only the Democrats doing it. No, it was the Uniparty, but it was the Republicans who started it and then went the whole way through to actually doing regime change.
That's right. And also, it's not just that Clinton had a full blockade around the country for years, but also like a ton of bombing campaigns. We didn't like, I don't know, call it a war. So people think like, oh, George H.W. Bush went to war with Iraq and then George W. Bush, but Bill Clinton bombed Iraq constantly through his entire presidency. And that's just, we were essentially bombing Iraq with a few breaks in between from 1991 or 92, whenever we launched that war, all the way through to, in 91, all the way through to 2020, whatever, or what 2000 teens or whatever. I mean, we were just bombing them for 30 plus years. Anyway, it's something.
So like, because like whether or not we think Ben Ferguson is really that dumb, it's like there are still, and I think there's something about me that I don't know if it's a naivety or if it's like a incredulity that like I just expect at some point, especially when like we can look back at everything, I start to expect that people, it's one thing in maybe 2008 and 2012 and even 2015 for only maybe a small portion of the country, mainly libertarians and anti-war people on the right and left, to know about this stuff. But I just felt like at some point, like, okay, haven't we all now kind of figured all this out? But no, there's still people today who have this like cartoonish idea of the foreign policy history, and I don't know what to think about that. That there's this sort of disconnect where people are still operating on this pretense that like and it's the sort of the World War II lesson that like the issue is when we're not active enough, right? And the issue is when we're not trying to intervene, is when we're trying to appease or pursue peace. That's the only issue. And I'm just like, again, you feel like, I know, to give, I guess, some credit, like there are some people who are maybe not supporting Trump right now, but were part of that America First coalition who did learn that lesson. But again, like, it seems like your average median Trump supporter and Republican party member, just like, they still aren't contending with that, which it's just, I don't know if that's just sort of blind party loyalty and they're just repeating talking points, or like what's up with that?
Yeah, well, I think there's a lot to that, question. And so I get the first thing I would say, and I remember I was having a conversation with someone who, all right, I'll say it. Who cares? I'll say it. I was having a conversation with Connor Freeman from the who used to work at the Libertarian Institute, who literally, I think this was a couple weeks before he just went nuclear on me on Twitter and hates my guts or something and some weird thing. But like 2 weeks before that, he was like texting me about how thankful he was for how good I was being on Venezuela and how good I was being on, opposing ICE being crazy in Minnesota and stuff like that. And I had come out, you might remember this, but I had come out with this post about just blasting ICE and their behavior. And then this got basically, I got trashed from every direction for this because I've been an immigration restrictionist. And so then like the immigration restrictionists were like, oh, you never really meant it. You were always a phony. And then the libertarian open borders types were like, you should have known. And then like which I still feel, it was like, no, I can believe that the answer isn't just let 10 million people a year pour into the country when everyone hates that. And also, we have a constitution. We can't have masked thugs going around. And also, if 6 of you have disarmed a guy, you can't just empty your entire round into, I actually don't think there's a contradiction there. But anyway, so I had gotten into like a Twitter back and forth with Matt Walsh from the Daily Wire, which maybe I didn't handle the best, but he certainly was winning in terms of like he put a ratio on me, which is, I'm usually on the winning side of a ratio, but I've caught a couple hot ones in my day. But anyway, so I was talking with Connor, we were texting back and forth. And at one point he had said something like, look, dude, look how helpless these right wingers are. Like they're all agreeing with him. And I was like, yeah, okay. But look, dude, the thing about it is that I think us, Mises libertarian types, broadly speaking, or whoever, however you consider yourself, the people, we've had a lot of issues over the last few years that have become consensus, have become like overwhelmingly popular with the American people. Like, whatever, on Russiagate, on wokeism, on the global war on terrorism, on COVID, on Biden, on all of these things. Like, we kind of stuck out these positions. I remember being against lockdowns really early in COVID. The majority was not with us. But today, to be against lockdowns, it's just like a you were right position. But that being said, so anyway, I was making the point to Connor, I was like, look, man, okay, look, Matt Walsh got 40,000 likes on this tweet, and I only got 26,000 likes on my response. But like, hey, it's 26,000. I'm still old enough that like I remember the Ron Paul days, and the idea that we were even just in the conversation at all, the fact that our ideas are even being represented, is it so like, okay, we're not going to win every issue. Sometimes there are some issues where we'll be the vocal minority, and that's our job, to still be the vocal minority on them. So anyway, I guess I'm not rejecting the premise of your question. I'm just like pointing out that like it's easy for us to be disappointed with all of the groups that are going along with Trump, as he drives this whole thing off a cliff. But also, let's almost start by saying, hey, pretty cool that actually a lot of people aren't going along with that. And that this really is like, think about the fact that like Tucker Carlson and Megyn Kelly and Alex Jones and Candace Owens and, however you feel about them in totality, there are the most popular commentators in the country are not going along with this. And I'm not saying I'm not even claiming the majority or even close to the majority of that credit goes to libertarians, but we get some of it. We've been in the ear of all those people. We are part of the reason why Rogan and Theo Vaughn and, like people like that are like, no, like, even though we're the guys who got Trump elected, we're not going along with this. So I am first and foremost tremendously encouraged by that. by the dynamic that this is the most unpopular war in American history, that Donald Trump's approval ratings are tanking, that his base is collapsing, his coalition is destroyed. That's actually a really encouraging sign. We've never seen anything like this before. When Obama ran as a peace candidate, but then went to war, none of that happened. When Bush ran as a peace candidate, but then went to war, none of that happened. Even under Biden, when he ran as the moderate, kind of like, let's go back to normal candidate, and then tried to murder everybody who didn't want to take an experimental vaccine, slight hyperbole, but not that much. He still didn't lose his coalition off that. It wasn't until he went senile that he lost. So that part is very encouraging. And then, that's a lot of talking to then finally get to your question. But there's different groups of people, right? Like there are the commentator class, there's the Israel lobby class, the Ben Shapiro's, the Mark Levins, the Alan Dershowitz's or whatever. Like these people are just obviously going to support whatever is the Likud line. So that's expected. Then there's another group of commentators who, in a weird way, I think I find myself being more frustrated with lately. The Steven Crowders, the Will Chamberlains, they're not exactly part of the Israel lobby. They're just kind of like, I'm following Trump because I think that's where my meal ticket is. I think that's where the popularity is. And that is disappointing because those guys will support something that is explicitly against what they said they were for yesterday. Like there's that one Twitter account. It's called Gunther Eagleman. Yeah. I mean, this guy was retweeting every anti-war thing I had to say a year ago. Down to no war with Iran.
And
no new wars.
And saying keep out Lindsey Graham. He's a war hawk. And
so but then again, I tend, maybe this is just my, Ron Paul always telling me I have to be optimistic, is kind of wearing off on me. But I go, well, that is pretty revealing, though, to anyone who's paying attention, right? It's like, come on. I mean, this guy just does not stand for anything. And then amongst people, just like amongst the regular like voters and the American people, there are, I don't know, man. Even when Joe Biden, like after the debate performance, where they were like, okay, we got to force him out and get someone else, he still would have carried 30-something% of the vote, maybe 40-something% of the vote. I mean, even it's like just the way the country works is that most people's minds fall into this. This is why libertarians always love the term duopoly, because it is like you just fall into this thing like I'm so against the other side that I'm for this side, and you'll rationalize away anything. And so we kind of got to accept, in the same way we always kind of knew, right, that we weren't trying to convince 100% of the American people. We knew that was unachievable. We weren't even shooting for 51%, but we were like, hey, if we can get 10%, God willing, 15%. Like that's going to be enough to move the needle on this huge. So I try to just accept that those people they're not really listening to the arguments and weighing out, who had a stronger point. They're just going like, I'm on this team. I'm with my guy. That's okay. It doesn't mean they're bad people. It does mean they're supporting something evil, but that doesn't mean that they're necessarily evil. But at least I would go, hey, there are a whole lot of people who are movable. That's one of the things that's been demonstrated here. And I do think that while Tucker Carlson is not a perfect libertarian, and neither is Candace Owens or Megyn Kelly or anyone like that or anything close to that, but man, I mean, Tucker Carlson's takes on foreign policy are very, very close to me and yours. This is the #1 right-wing show in America. And there's lots of just examples like that where I do feel like a lot of our ideas, not all of them, but a lot of our ideas are getting more of a fair hearing amongst the American public than, when I first became a libertarian about 20 years ago. It couldn't have fathomed that this many people would hear these ideas.
Yeah, I think there's something to that there's different groups at play here. I think it's hard to even know like how much of this is, I guess, somewhat demographics of like the age groups or whatnot. Although I don't want to just say there's almost, maybe it's partly that, but I also do see in the younger generations a sort of split where some of them are like extreme dissidents, but then another one where they kind of knee jerk the other direction and kind of also become like the repeating the party line types and whatnot. So I don't know. I guess again, I think it's partly just my issue where it's just when we see something so clearly, because like we've read about it, and then there was such a disaster of of just the blowout and blowback of all this foreign policy, just both internationally, globally over there, but then also just the consequences it had for us at home, which you spend a lot of time talking about. Like, even if you wanted to be very isolationist about it, it's like, okay, but like the fact that we can't afford to do this, the fact that we're having, these soldiers come home and blow their brains out, have major mental health issues, the fact that then our own, for all this thing, like sometimes like the Matt Walsh types, will sort of be like, well, I just want to focus on America. I don't want to get drawn into the whole, Israel debate. And it's kind of like, even if you don't want to, even if you don't care about the Israel debate cares about you. Because it's just like, oh, you just want to focus on American issues and you voted for Trump because that's what he ran on. Gee, I wonder why we're not focusing on American issues, Matt.
Yeah.
Like, gee, what could it be? What keeps on dragging us back to the Middle East, even though
it's like on the level of I don't know. It's like being like, listen, I believe in the sanctity of marriage, and I believe that your number one concern should be, your marriage. And then you'd be like, look, I don't support my wife cheating on me, but I can't be obsessed with this other guy all the time. Like, well, I don't know, dude. If your wife's cheating on you, then you got to think about this becomes an issue. Now, yes, ideally, we all agree, ideally, we wouldn't have to focus on any of this. However, in this scenario, we really have no other choice. And, I try to hit home on this as much as I can, but I'm sure me and you have talked about this before. But there is something, it gives me goosebumps. Like, it makes the hair on my neck stand up. When you think about John Quincy Adams' quote, which is in the 1790s or something like that, but his quote where he said, if we go around the world in search of monsters to destroy, we will become the dictatress of the world, but we will lose our own spirit. Like, the idea that if that wasn't channeling the divine in some way, to understand that that was a really crazy claim at the time, to say that that we weren't even the full middle part of North America at that point. You know what I'm saying? Like, this country wasn't even what we even think of the landmass of this country right now. Like, the English and French owned the middle, and the Indians controlled the West. And he's out there going, we will take over the entire world, but we'll lose our spirit. And I think about that, and you think about, say, like, from the conservative perspective, from the Christian perspective, or what the Vietnam War did to American culture. Like, it's easy to have this idea that we fight these wars and that's over there. But just like the same way Ron Paul would always say, there's no such thing as economic issues and social issues. They're all one issue, right? Like, there's inflation. Okay, that's an economic issue. But what does that mean? It means married couples get divorced and children get raised without their father in their home. Like, that's a social issue too, when you have economic pressure like that. And in the same sense, it's like, you just think like, even and I love that Tucker, when he was blasting Trump for this, focused on Venezuela so much. Like, let's just say it was easy. Let's say no one dies, or none of us die, just other people, just other brown people in their countries, they die. And we can just take their stuff and get away. It's like, oh, you think that doesn't have any effect when you just say that out loud and everyone knows that? You think that's not going to like deteriorate the soul of your own people? Well, I don't know. I don't think so. The older you get, the more you learn that there's no getting away with stuff like that in this world. It's one of the beautiful things and kind of tragic things about this world, but you really can't get away with that. You do stuff like that, it comes back to get you. And that's, I think that's obvious. The more once you look for that, you just see it everywhere. You're like, oh yeah, of course the Cultural Revolution happened during Vietnam, because what were the responsible grown-ups in the room gonna say? You're like, no, come on, fall back in line with this system. This system is about killing babies. What do you mean? That's it. How are you ever going to, how is a dad who supports the war in Vietnam ever going to talk to his 17-year-old daughter about how she needs to put on some more clothes? What moral authority do you have about anything? You know,
one of the most impactful things I ever heard you say was at the New York Mises Caucus event back in, I guess this was either 21 or 22, and you put it similar to what you're saying now, and in slightly different terms. You said that, you know, after 9/11, we had the conservative evangelical Christian majority in America had this sort of moral mandate, you know, this cultural hegemony, so to speak, and they literally staked it all on killing like 1 million Afghanis and Iraqis and other, you know, Arabs in the Middle East, right? And then all the domestic stuff that followed, and then it's just it's like it's this whole cause and effect thing. And again, there's this growing frustration I have where I think it's fair to point out that compared to probably during the Ron Paul years, and, you know, good grief, I can't even imagine being around during the Harry Brown years, you know, but like, we're definitely better off than we were then. It's just astounding how much the degree to which people can delude themselves, and just like, especially, you know, you brought this up on a show the other day, which I don't think you've actually did it yet. You're supposed to post that link to that Scott Horton article from 2005, where he literally is talking about, I was like, did he really write that? And I went and looked, and he literally goes through and talks about how if we go to war with Iran, then they have all this military capability and they'll be able to touch all our military bases. And then basically what they would do, because they're near the Persian Gulf, is that because of their strategic location, is they're going to close the Strait of Hormuz, and it's going to cause this giant, like, you know, they're going to hold the world by the balls, essentially, because of all the disruption that's going to cause the trade. It's like, so Scott wrote that in 2005, 21 years before it actually happened. And that's just one tiny example of how many times, whether it's not, again, not just libertarians, guys like Pat Buchanan, guys like, gosh, I'm trying to remember other paleoconservative names.
Sam Francis and Paul Gottfried, and all those guys were great on this stuff.
And there's great anti-war leftists too from back then. Like everyone is accurately predicting these things time and time and time again. And it's just like, I the other day I literally like just reposted in long form the entirety of Harry Brown's September 12th, 2001 essay, When Will We Learn? And it's just like, I don't know. I guess some of us have, but it still feels like the vast majority are just sitting there like, well, it's like watching your kid keep on touching the hot stove. Going, ow, it keeps hurting me. And then you watch them do it again.
Well, but look, let's at least separate for a second government policy from the American people, because the American people overwhelmingly, it seems, have learned the lesson. And that's a thing that I'm clinging to that is my life raft of hope here. But but it is true that this is the most unpopular war. There's not a single war in the global war on terrorism or before that was this unpopular as it was launched. So, like, for the most part, the American people do recognize that, and they're trying to cook the books right now and go, but look at this poll of MAGA Republicans where they still support this. But look, dude, if you look at the polls, and I take polls with a grain of salt, but if you look at all the polls, if we can learn anything from them, Trump is tanking. Trump is underwater with white working class, non-college educated voters. His base, he's dying out here, and it's only going to get worse if he can't pull something that he can call a win out of this, which I think looks very unlikely. And so, you know, a lot of people have learned the lesson from this stuff, and not, you know, again, that has not changed the political class, but they are very well aware of this dynamic and they are very concerned with it. And so I do think, and again, all of this stuff is always a guess when it comes to strategy, but I do think it's like, all right, that's the vulnerability in this system that we can exploit right now, is that we can keep talking to people and just keep presenting these arguments, which are so clearly so much stronger than any of theirs. And you know, if you think about even so, you know, there a bunch of us who were really opposed to the 12-day war, we took a lot of flack from the Hawks after the war, and they would really try to go, aha, you guys were so against this, you were acting like this would be a catastrophe, but it wasn't. We just took out the nuclear site, and look at that nuclear program completely obliterated, no Americans dead, all this, and they boasted about this. Now, of course, our arguments have aged very well, because like if you have to go back to war with that same country in 7 months, and it actually is a disaster this time, and a lot of Americans die, and a lot more are wounded, and a lot more people total die, and the global economy takes a big hit, and you had to spend like $100 billion on it, okay, it doesn't look so clean anymore. But if you just think, there were a lot of these montages that were made, and I had made this point several times, but there were some people who I really love and really admire, smarter than me, who I've learned a lot from, who got a little bit out over their skis with predictions about the 12-day war. Now, I will point out in a very petty way, when you watch the clips of me in those montages, I'm almost always like caveating what I'm saying. Like I was always going, this carries an unacceptable risk of catastrophe. Whereas they would point to, and if you want to be fair, okay, Tucker Carlson and Jeffrey Sachs, and I believe John Mearsheimer, they all had some quotes where they didn't caveat it. And they went, look, if you do this, Iran will touch all of our bases in the area, and they will close the Strait of Hormuz, and they will do all of this stuff, and it'll be a disaster for the global economy. And that didn't happen after the 12-day war. And so these hawks jumped on them. Aha, you were so wrong. Look, you said, but now after this war, don't you kind of have to go back and go, okay, even if maybe they should have caveated a little bit, like they got it a little bit wrong. I guess we could drop bunker busters on Fordo and the Iranians would still play nice under the old Ayatollah. But at this point, haven't in spirit, at least, they've been completely vindicated. Like what they were saying was that Iran is not nearly as puny a country as Iraq or Afghanistan or Syria or Libya or Somalia. This is a different thing. And we're learning a big lesson right now about what the strength of the U.S. empire actually is. And
it's interesting to see what the global blowback for this is already, because not only are a bunch of European countries turning on him and China's giving him pressure, but I think the most surprising only because of, the relationship, there are consequences for Saudi Arabia, obviously, from this. So that's why they're upset about it. But like when it's so bad that Saudi Arabia is coming to the table and saying, Trump, you gotta negotiate with Iran, like that's bad.
Yeah, well, that's right. And Trump is out there just like the petulant child that he is. I mean, his interview this morning, well, I guess it was taped yesterday, but it aired this morning with Maria Bartiromo. And he's just blasting these NATO countries for not helping. He's like, we subsidize all of their defense and they're not helping. And look, me and you are two guys who are substantially more against NATO than Donald Trump is, right? Like me and you wouldn't be in our 6th year of presidency and just now mentioning, okay, he said some things about NATO and got them to pay a little bit more, but we wouldn't have been trying to get them to pay more. We'd have been trying to just end the alliance or at least get America out of it. But this is the most ridiculous criticism of NATO ever launched at them. There's no obligation under the NATO treaty that if we launch a war of aggression, they have to be right there with us. It's the deal is that if we get attacked, we all have to collectively help the defense effort. The deal isn't that if we just decide to launch a war that they all warn against, they're on the hook when it becomes a disaster. It's just too ridiculous. And Donald Trump is trying. I mean, it's so, again, like this isn't even propaganda like WMDs or 12 days to slow the spread. This is propaganda like everything's okay with Joe Biden. Like you get to a point where you're like, dude, that is just not going to work. There's no way you can convince people that. And as Donald Trump is sitting here trying to say it's not a war, but we've been at war for 47 years and it's easy. We've already won and the strait will naturally open, but we have to blockade the strait and it's really easy to open the strait. And we've been tremendous. We could end it right now and it would have been a huge victory, but we're also really furious at all of our allies for not helping us with this very easy victory. It's just, this isn't even professional level propaganda. This is amateur stuff that just cannot work.
Well, and there's something like there's two things I want to say to that, which is one, I feel like you were talking to, I think, Emily from Breaking Points the other day about this, and this sort of like the 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 left lost their mind about Trump, but a lot of the things that they warned about have kind of proven to be true in a way. Which very rings true to me because again, so I wasn't a libertarian until about 2017, 2018, and you played a big role in that. But before that, so 2015, I was a bleeding heart, like Occupy Wall Street, Bernie Sanders type, anti-war lefty. And then when Bernie Sanders got, robbed, kind of like Ron Paul got robbed from, the anti-war candidates trying to run in respective parties are unable to get that nomination. Still bitter about that. But after that, then the entire Democratic Party, including fellow people who were in my camp of that, were saying, okay, I know we just kind of spent the last year talking about how horrible Hillary Clinton is, but we got to vote for her because Donald Trump is like an existential threat to not just our country, but like to the world. And this is 10, 11 years ago now. So I was just kind of like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
I guess you guys are right. So I went along with it. Then Trump wins, and it, again, I feel like this long con has been played on me, right? And I wonder if that's how you feel too, because it felt like Trump, and I think this went into why we even entertained voting for him reluctantly the last time around, because it seems like in his first term, there were all these doomsday predictions about how bad he was going to be. And then there were still things that were bad, but it was almost like, where he's bad, he's kind of status quo bad. And there's also some areas where he's like, at least like measurable improvement from the status quo, and then everything that's coming after him is just Russiagate stuff and just the left calling everyone Nazis and going into the woke insanity. But now it seems like we've gone full circle, and it's like, okay, this is the Trump I feel like the left thought was going to happen in his first term. But I'm just wondering, like, is the difference Trump, or is there something else? Is it like losing in that in 2020 and everything he went through between that? Did that change him? Or again, and I keep referencing this, but like, is it the influence of things like the Israeli lobby and other neocons that have been, kind of pulling on him for the last several years? Like, I'm just curious, like, why do you think there has been this sort of change? Is it more to do with Trump, or is it more to do with the influences around him?
Oof. Man, that's a tough question, and there's a lot of speculating, to even attempt to answer that question. I'll say this, right? So looking back, it's like, look, even what you're talking about, even with like the Bernie Sanders thing, and then leftists being convinced to be funneled into Hillary Clinton. I mean, just like think about like Bernie Sanders, whether this is not, I'm not alleging any conspiracy. I'm not denying any conspiracy either. But if you were to say Bernie Sanders is an op designed to energize the left and then throw them into the Democratic establishment, well, certainly in effect, that's exactly what he tried to do. Whether you think that was intentional or not, but like the guy railing against the big banks was trying by the end to funnel you into supporting the candidate of the big banks. And we know that literally the Democrats cheated the democratic process. It's almost like a Republican who stands for empire, a Democrat who's against democracy, right? Like the Democrats cheated the democratic process 3 years in a row in their primary. 3 cycles in a row in their primary in 2016 and 2020. And then in 2024, they just didn't have one at all. And they also, I mean, look, it's hard to overstate how much they stepped up the hysteria and insanity and really crossed red lines of new American precedents. I mean, you talk about the Hunter Biden laptop scandal. I mean, blatantly stole an election by just like framing a story. We know this from the Twitter files that they silenced the story, silenced the voices who were raising awareness about the story. They had these 54 intelligence agents all sign this letter saying it was Russian disinformation. We know this is not true. This was Hunter Biden's laptop. We know that for a fact now, and that clearly was the difference in the election. I mean, that definitely was an issue that would have swung at least a few points, and that was the most razor-thin election ever. The few points is the whole difference there. And of course, you had the woke insanity, Russiagate, which was completely like just the deep state framing the president. You had COVID. You had like so many things going on here. So it's not, I'm certainly not saying we were wrong to tell the truth about any of those things, because we were right about all of that stuff and they were wrong about it and we were right to call it out. I think that in the mix of all of these things happening, just your average kind of liberal person, they didn't know about any of that stuff really, or really read or think about any of it. It was just like, I don't know, this is what I saw on CNN. And mostly what they were just reacting to was just how clearly an awful, just horrendous person Donald Trump is. Which was always true. I mean, just like this horrible guy, like the most horrible guy, the type of guy who cheats on your pregnant wife with a porn star. You know what I mean? That guy, like just the worst guy in the world. The worst guy in the world who's talking about like he would date his daughter, just clearly cares about his own ego more than anything else, and clearly is an ignoramus who has never read a book about anything and yet thinks he knows better than everybody else. Like but what we were talking about was like, yeah, dude, but the deep state is framing that guy just for the crime of saying, hey, we should get out of these deep state forever wars or something like that. And so it was very easy to go like, yeah, you're concerned with this little petty, like personality or the person. We're talking about something much bigger than that. Something did change in Donald Trump also. And I don't know what it is. I've heard a lot, at this point, I know a lot of people who are like pretty close to that. Like I got sources now and stuff. And I hear a lot about like, oh, it is that he is controlled, that he is threatened, that they're, and I don't know exactly what changed, but something for sure changed in Donald Trump. I mean, and I don't mean to say this like, oh, we were duped. I didn't have like crazy high hopes for Donald Trump's sake. And I said this, if you go listen, even when I was talking about supporting him, I constantly made it very clear that like, I will be back here having denounced him later, almost certainly, because he will disappoint, as they all do. But, I don't know. I think perhaps, he resisted the lobby substantially more in his first term than he did in this term. In his first term, he gave him stuff like, he moved the Capitol, and he even had some like the Soleimani strike, and he tore up the JCPOA. But there was a lot of pressure on Donald Trump to go to war with Iran on at least 2 different occasions in his first term, and he resisted that. And there was all the same propaganda about how, they were weeks away from nuclear weapons or all that. I suspect, I do not know this, but I suspect that things really changed during the Joe Biden administration, particularly from the perspective of the lobby and the government of Israel. October 7th happened. The response in the genocide of Gaza in response to that happened. And the Democratic the Democratic voters completely turned on Israel. And Donald Trump comes back in, and now his base is turning on Israel also. And so whatever leverage they have, whatever pressure they have, there's no question that they ramped it up to 11. They recognize that this is our last opportunity. We have lost the young generation, but this is the most pro-Israel, and we're going to get everything we can out of this administration. And it seems to me like there was a real battle. I mean, Donald Trump came in. Even before he was president, he was sending Steve Witkoff over there to negotiate a ceasefire. He wanted to end these wars. That was his goal coming in. And it seems that at a certain point, Donald Trump, who after all is motivated by more than anything else, how tremendous Donald Trump is and how everybody else better think that. And I think at a certain point, whether this is because he's blackmailed or threatened or just convinced, that he went, well, I'll be nothing but a failure of a president going against the current here. But if I go with the current here, maybe I could go down in history. Maybe I could go down, there is a weird dynamic, Jacob. It's something we don't think about enough. when understanding the nature of our government, not the nature of government, which I think libertarians think about a lot, the nature of the state, but I mean the nature of our state, the United States of America in 2026, where, sometimes people, for example, right, me and you both have read a bunch of books and articles and listened to lectures about people talking about the imperial presidency, or the concentration of power in the executive branch, right? You could hear Justin Amash's entire political career. He's been talking about the concentration of power in the executive branch. And he's absolutely right about everything he's saying, right? But at the same time, you'd see like something in Donald Trump's first term. Donald Trump comes out and goes, why don't we stop fighting all the wars on terrorism and have détente with Russia? And all of a sudden, the CIA is framing Donald Trump for being a Russian spy. And so now he can't make a deal with Russia. So you realize in a way, wait a minute, is the president incredibly powerful, or does he have no power whatsoever? And the real answer here is, right, both. Yeah. To the president of the United States of America, if he wants to launch wars, has more power than Genghis Khan, has more power than any human being who's ever existed. He's got the biggest military arsenal at his disposal, and he doesn't even kind of need to even pretend to get congressional authority. It's just not even it's not even like George W. Bush, like I got an authorization of military force. You don't even need to pretend that ever since Obama. Those days are over, and you can bomb whatever you want to, launch whatever you want to. No War Powers Act. It's all a joke. The War Powers Act, even if they passed it and held it, he could just keep doing it and no one's going to do anything to him. So you have all the power in the world if you want to start wars. If you want to end the wars, you have as much power as me or you. And so at a certain point you go, well, what would a guy like Donald Trump choose? And this is what he chose.
He's going to choose what's going to make him seem better. It's like legacy building, right. but legacy building is even worse when it's with someone with the personality of Donald Trump,
Yes. So that's exactly right. So now the thing about it is that if somebody was the enemy of CNN and Hillary Clinton and Jeb Bush, then, even if their personality is really awful, we could look the other way on that. But then once they become CNN and Hillary Clinton and Jeb Bush, you're like, well, now we just have the worst of all worlds. We got the establishment war party, but with the worst human being imaginable running all of it. So yes, that's right. It's literally like Donald Trump is like like machine gun fire. And if it's aimed at all the bad guys, you're like, this is crazy, but it's taking the bad. But then it like goes over here and you're like, there's little kids over there. Stop, don't spray over there. And so unfortunately, I just think that's kind of the situation now. And that's now we got no choice but to just oppose this with everything we got. At least it's clarifying.
Well, we either oppose it with everything we got, or we play 5D chess and try to say that it's actually somehow good, which is unfortunately, and I hate to do this, but I guess it's just like the law. Like I was actually kind of complaining a little bit when we were texting earlier in preparation, and I was like, do we got to do libertarian infighting like drama coverage whenever you're on the show? And it's just like, yeah, we do. There's no choice. It's what the
can I just
libertarian gods. Go ahead.
Well, I kind of, in a weird way, and I talked about this too when we did the whole the thing with Zulu, where I don't know. I guess I feel like when I talk to you is almost like when I want to talk about this stuff. And I understand that I think sometimes there's a dynamic where you're like, no, dude, let's talk about all the stuff. And I'm like, I know, but I talk about all that stuff all the time. And then I'm in this weird, there's something about like the scale of where my career's gone, where now it's like, well, if I were to respond to any of this on just like one of my podcasts, 90% of the audience has no idea what I'm talking about and just doesn't care. And then also it's kind of a turnoff because I'm going like, hey, guys, okay, so there's this group that I'm kind of a part of, and there's these really dumb ones in the group, and they're making these really stupid arguments, and they're so ridiculous, so let me slap them down. And then people just go, all right, it sounds like the group you're talking about really sucks, so I guess I can dismiss them. And I'm not really trying. But then, like, when I come talk to you, I'm like, no, like, okay, I should address some of this stuff. Because, I don't know, it's always a little bit of a battle for me, like when to ignore, when to address. And I probably fall on the side of wanting to address everything too much. But also I feel like I don't know, there's people out there, maybe like good people who heard that and then go, well, what would Dave say to this or something? So anyway, yes, I want you to bring this up. I want to talk about it all.
Yeah. Well, I think there's something to it where it's like, part of my instinct, I think, is that I don't want to make libertarianism look worse than it already does to the people who know it exists. And so part of the airing dirty laundry part is a little bit of a turnoff. But then it's also like, if it doesn't get addressed, then the laundry is not going to get washed. So I guess we have to address it.
Well,
so,
dude, that's exactly how I felt about the Zulu thing, was that it was just like, I go, look, dude, the last thing in the world I want to do is get more eyes on the fact that someone who's at least by a small camp, but a very committed camp, seen as like a serious, person in the libertarian world, is making this argument that like you should let your own child die before you aggress in the tiniest possible way. I don't want to put any eyes on that, because come on, I know I'm in the business of trying to make this thing sell to as many people as possible. And I know what that, like, even if that was correct, which it is clearly not, but even if that was correct, you go, well, we can't lead with that because that kills the chance of the other 99% of this ever being sellable. But also, I think it's not correct, but like, whatever, I don't want to put more eyes on that. But then, and this is probably my own immaturity and lack of discipline, but then there's people going, dude, you're too much of a coward to ever debate that guy because he'd ruin your whole thing. And then I'm sitting there, I'm like, oh, really? Do you actually think that? That's what you actually think is going to happen? Okay. Well, then, and so I don't know, it is a battle, but I guess where I've come, my compromise is I'll come and rant about this stuff with you, Jacob. So a few times a year, me and you will have to do this. We can talk about other stuff too, but we got to get to this.
We got to get to this. So like, and this is tough because there's also a personal aspect to it where like these are some of the people, and one of them in particular, who I guess we'll drop his name because he's come after you. We already name dropped Connor, who has come after you a little bit, which that's a whole separate thing. But then Austin Padgett, who he was part of the whole Mises Caucus thing. He's obviously with Angela, and he was part of the whole thing of the Trump strategy and meeting with Trump at Mar-a-Lago and pulling all that off. And he's been going after you more and more recently. And then there was a big, like semi-big one, comparatively in the last day or so, where he's basically like the whole case we just laid out about how some of it's Trump, but a lot of it is this foreign lobby that's sort of the Israel thing that's pulling Trump into all these disastrous things that have no benefit for anyone except Israel. Kind of thing which, like, when none of these policies benefit the American people, none of these benefits make anyone safer. They hurt everyone else in the world. And like, well then why would anyone want you to do it? There's only one country that wants you to do it, all right? But then he's like, well, you're giving into this impulse, Dave, of you're siding with barbarism over civilization, and you don't realize, and it's like, and if Austin listens to this, it's like, I'm trying to be as charitable as I can, but I already said this to him when I had him on my show a year ago when it wasn't quite this intense, and I said there's something about what he does where it's indistinct. It might sound more sophisticated, but it's basically just a more sophisticated version of Trump's playing 4D chess. You just got to trust, dude, that
it's no more than that. Look, I mean, and I listen, I'm trying my best. Look, to all these people like Connor and Austin and all of them, like, they've said some shit that, like, I don't think will ever be cool again, but I swear I have nothing against any of these guys. Like, I wish them all the best. I don't mean this to be too insulting up front, but if you want, we could even pull up the Connor tweet just to not misrepresent. I mean, not the Connor tweet, I'm sorry, the Austin tweet, just to not misrepresent him at all. But the thing that bugs me the most about Austin, who's just kind of like, dude, go have your opinions or whatever, that's fine. But he's kind of constantly like coming at me. And there's this very strange dynamic where, Jacob, it's almost like, to me, like if my wife just started coming out and posting really provocative political takes. And it's like, okay, hey, that's not exactly me, but it is my wife saying that. And then it almost feels like, wait, does that also represent what, the thing is that we, the Mises Caucus, this big kind of like, this whole movement thing that we did that overtook like the third biggest political party in the country, that I planted myself very much at the center of, ultimately ended up making Angela the Libertarian Party chair, after we took over in Reno. And then because of the dynamics of Chase Oliver ending up getting the nomination and literally being the most invisible presidential nominee, like, I mean, even more invisible than any Green Party nominee that I could think of, a Reform Party nominee that I could think of. I mean, he just literally was like, it was almost as if we didn't run a presidential campaign. I've never seen anything like it. I think the guy lost Twitter followers over his presidential campaign. I don't think he got a big media appearance off of it. Maybe he had one interview with John Stossel or something like that. Anyway, it was almost like Angela became the face of the Libertarian Party for that whole time. And her Trump strategy became the face of the Libertarian Party. Like that was the story of the LP in 2024, was that Angela McArdle had worked out this deal to get Donald Trump there. It wasn't even the presidential campaign at all. And then Austin is her husband. And so it's almost in a weird way, like there's this kind of like quasi, I'm speaking for us. And I'm not saying he is, I'm just saying that's like the way it's perceived. And so I try in a way to ignore it. But at a certain point, if someone who's attached to the thing that I was attached to is still on this just ridiculous, like, we're going to kiss up to Donald Trump no matter what, after we are, I mean, let's get real, dude. We're 8 months past the point where there's even anything defensible about this administration. That's where I almost feel like, okay, I should respond to that. And look, just being fair, it's not exactly, I haven't seen, I'm not saying he hasn't said this, but I haven't seen him exactly say it's a battle of civilization versus this. Like, I like Austin, I like Angela, I think they have a sweet family and I like both of them. I think Austin's smart. I've had a few conversations with him. I think he's a smart guy. He's certainly much smarter than Austin Peterson or something like that. He's not making like the dumbest argument. But the thing he says, when I said something on Twitter today where I was on, so I mean, literally, I'm not
it up here.
If you want to bring up the tweet, bring it up, and I'll respond exactly. So, okay, so going to the top here. So last night, I'm on a stream with Sneeko, who, people give me shit for streaming with him. This is nothing new. I like Sneeko. I don't know that much about him, but he's been nothing but cool to me. And I saw he's a young guy who's got a big young audience. And he was really against the Venezuela strike, really against the destruction of Gaza, really against the war in Iran. And I like having conversations with him. He asked me to go on with this Professor Yang, or I might be saying his name wrong. And so we went on and we had a conversation. Now, in this clip that people were trying to make, with the Libertarian Party itself was trying to make a big deal, there's literally nothing controversial about what I said. I said, there's an argument that it's better that the Democrats win the midterms because the Republicans need to be punished for this. And then after that, we should never support the Democrats, and I'll never vote for them anyway. But we should hope that maybe Thomas Massie runs, or maybe some other candidate emerges who's better than this, or something. You can go listen to the clip. And Austin starts with palling around with Zhang to help the Dems is evil. It's like, already you're like, look, dude. What? Look at the Archie Flower language that you're using there. Like palling around with Zhang to help the Dems. Is this not identical? Why does every defender of Zionism or excuser of this Zionist BS always have to use the identical tactic of the woke left? Palling around. Remember when all the guys used to say to me, you're palling around with Nick Fuentes. You're that. In other words, had a conversation with. That's literally what you mean. Had a conversation with to help the Dems. Dude, if you listen to this show, and Jacob, I encourage everybody to go listen to it. Not just this clip here, but listen to the show I did last night with these guys. Dude, we eviscerated the Democrats. Even after this clip, we both went on for like 20 more minutes about all of the crimes that the Democrats have committed in the last 20 years and how you absolutely can't support them no matter how disgusted you are at the Republicans. So this framing already, this is nothing more than you talked to the wrong person. That's it. So that's the first tweet here. That's all he's got, and that's what he's coming with me with. And if you want to lock us in a global government that's impossible to escape, Okay, this is partly Thomas Massey's fault for not working with Trump over a stupid budget and then forcing all of his fans to go to war against civilization on his. Okay, I guess that's what you were referring to.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, dude. This is Thomas Massey's fault for having some principles, not working with him on a budget. Yes, you're right. It's Thomas Massey's fault for putting his foot down about not returning to pre-Obama level spendings, not returning to Donald Trump first term level spendings that were record high, right? Like we can't even, not returning to pre-pandemic level spendings. Thomas Massey's having a fight over returning to pandemic level spendings. Like this is just too ridiculous for you. Oh, it's his fault. He's the one who's wrong. And I'm sorry. It's just like, whatever. Here, go to the next tweet too, because it's
your response or his quote tweet to you.
No, his quote tweet to me. I just said all I said was, wow, Austin, impressive. Like maybe it's not, because he called me evil. I go, maybe what's evil is supporting, funding genocides and launching wars of aggression. And his response is, Trump has done more to help Palestine than you. Which just like, dude, this is like, it's uncomfortable to watch another grown man just embarrass themselves this way. Like, have a shred of shame or integrity. If you want, listen, obviously what happened here with Austin, I think it might be the case with Angela too, but I don't know. They flew too close to the sun. They got too close to the seat of power. I really regret my role in putting them in that position where they would even get there. But I also do understand that it's very hard to be thrown in a situation like that when you've never been prepared for it. But you get close enough and you convince yourself the best thing to do is defend this guy because I got a little bit of an in with this guy and I can maybe have some influence. And if you want to defend Donald Trump, have a little bit of honor. If you want to defend Donald Trump, defend the fact that he is the most pro-Israeli, pro-Zionist president in the history of the United States of America, which is really saying something, because they've all been pretty pro-Israel, at least since 1967. At least in terms of policy. And if you want, like, and he's the most pro-Israel while Israel has been the most ruthless to the Palestinians that they've ever been in the entire 80 plus year history. Okay. If you want to defend that, fine, defend it. If you can't defend it, feel free to shut up about it. But to sit here and say that he was a friend to the Palestinians is like, that is just,
like, after I funded and supported the burning down of your house, I then got the people burning down your house when it's already completely burned down to agree to, like, pause.
Yeah. And like, therefore, I did more for that house. And therefore, I did more for that house than you ever did for that house. I stopped it burning down. Yeah, but also a lot of the rest of us never burned it down, and we're publicly speaking out on the biggest platforms in the country against burning it down. So yeah, actually, no, I'm going to say that's wrong. And then look, just to yada yada even through some of this stuff, go up a little bit, just a little bit from there, because he goes, this is the line I think, he goes, this is how woke all of it is, even as they call us woke. But the next paragraph down, it's like you don't even care that Jiang's, I apologize if I'm mispronouncing that name. It's like you don't even care that Jiang's lying about the founders being Calvinists to hide the Massachusetts Bay Colony's impact onto the progressive era. Dude, it's like I don't even care about, I had no idea that was this guy's position. What do you mean? What is this other, again, it's like I don't even care. I talked to the guy. I said everything about how I feel. He didn't give me much pushback. He said some things that I kind of agreed with, and maybe a few I didn't, but he didn't say anything about that. This is literally the level of like when I would have a conversation with Nick Fuentes, and they would go, so you endorse the craziest thing that Nick Fuentes ever said. This is so pathetic. No, I believe in having conversations. I have conversations with left-wingers and right-wingers and libertarians and all types of different people. And That's what I'm in the business of doing. And if you're against that in spirit, then come out and make an argument against that. But to sit here and say that, you know, like what we would always be arguing about, the transitive property here, that if you talk to someone, now it's as if you don't care about everything that they've ever said. This is something we should all see through this, man. And in fact, Austin would have been the first one 5 years ago when one of these guys were making that argument to me to point out how stupid this is. And so, no, look, again, I don't know what does anybody think here? It's like you think, despite any of the arguments being made in 2024 by, say, Angela McArdle or even myself a little bit later on, or about like, hey, maybe we should throw this leverage behind Trump and try to get some, you know, demands out of it and see what we can do. Hey, we got Ross free. And so there's at least that. And there's some other benefits to this. However you feel about that now, obviously the argument hasn't aged that well, but you know, you work with the information you have at the time. To think, Jacob, that I ever would have supported a president who's doing what he's doing now, that guys like me and you, what did you think? We never meant any of the stuff we ever said. Like there's almost like this attitude, like I can't believe you're against wars of choice and money printing and record high budgets and all of this stuff. And then the last thing I'll say, and then I'm curious to hear your opinion on it, but it's like, look, dude, like you said, this is like some 4D chess argument. Oh, you don't even see that Donald Trump's working to destroy the whole global empire. Like, really? Seems to me like he's just launching more wars of choice. And for you to make a claim, you know, it's like on the level of you making a claim. If you just see a guy punching someone else in the face and you go, he's actually trying to save his life. You go, okay. Well, it seems to me like he's just trying to attack that guy. And the onus is clearly on you to have some real evidence that he's actually doing this with the right intention in place. And it's sad. It's sad to see him even like making these kind of pathetic excuses.
And I want to differentiate between a couple things, because I can be very charitable towards, say, Angela, or if you just say if it was someone else in her position, and if they said, listen, guys, and I think this is kind of the case to some extent, where they say, I have the ears of people in the administration, so I'm going to pull my punches in my public comments about what Trump does. I'm not going to defend it, but I'm not going to go after him too harshly so that I can keep on trying to leverage something, you know, to try to be a positive. There's a big difference between, like, I wouldn't go after Austin or Angela if that's all that they were doing.
Yes.
It's more Austin in this case, I think, who is like the bending over backwards to try to paint it as positive. There's also a comparison that came to mind, which, like, I hate to do it because it's almost I'm invoking Godwin's law and bringing up Hitler, and I'm not trying to do the whole Trump is Hitler thing, but it is kind of like, listen, like you can do a sort of a charitable sort of interpretation of Hitler in a way. Like I'm thinking about this because I've been listening to Daryl Cooper's World War II series.
Oh yeah,
which by the way, for everyone listening, Daryl Cooper will be on the show next Monday.
Oh, nice.
So that'll be pretty cool. Have a conversation with him. But I'm listening to that, and like you're getting behind the psychology of why the German people, including Hitler, were responding to this global communist threat that had, you know, not just like ruined a lot of the countries around them, but now that was trying to come and ruin their country, and it caused a lot of people to desert the army and whatnot. And so, like, yeah, you could say, oh, like in the beginning, Hitler was trying to like resist this global communist thing, and maybe he did some things that once he got in power undid some of the economic, like, but it's like, okay, but you know, the thing that kind of matters the most about Hitler is probably not like those things compared to, like, you know, the Holocaust and his acts of.
But at a certain point, even if you were sympathetic, you might want to go, that was a little bit too far, Mr.
Right,
Fuhrer.
exactly.
You know,
Yeah.
Well, right. No, I get your point. And also, I think to your point, there's a very different thing between even accepting, like, look, I'm just going to flatter this guy. I'm not going to criticize him. I'm going to try to get him to do this one thing a little bit less worse than it otherwise would have been. And there's a difference between that and going to, I'm going to start attacking and counter signaling and calling evil the people calling out this clear evil. And to me, and I think this is reasonable, that's like a line too far for me, dude. Go do whatever you're doing. I never attacked Angela or Austin for working with the administration, but don't come out here and attack me for something that you obviously would have known would have always been a deal breaker for me. Well, anybody could have, you never would have even approached me 2 years ago with, would you still support Donald Trump if he launched a war of aggression against Iran? Come on. No one would have even like suggested that would even be a possibility because they'd be too ashamed to even ask the question 2 years ago. So why do you think I've given up all of my values? And, I will say, I do think, I don't mean this to come off the wrong way, but there is just something about, like, from my career, I've kind of learned, like, look, if I got a meeting with Donald Trump in Mar-a-Lago right now, it'd be a big deal for me. It'd be like, poof, this is a huge thing. Like, wow, I'm meeting with the president. And I've been in a lot of fancy rooms on a lot of big shows, on a lot, like I'm more primed for that than most. Like most people, if you got up on stage in a room in front of 1,000 people, would kind of be like, whoa, I'm on stage in front of 1,000 people. For me, I could like get changed and take a nap on stage in front of 1,000 people because I've just been there a lot of times. I'm very used to it. And it's like anything else in life. You just get used to it. If someone threw a punch at me or you right now, we're like, whoa, a punch is coming at me. But if someone threw a punch at, I don't know, Floyd Mayweather, it's a different thing. He's just had a lot of punches thrown at him before, and he's going to just like roll off his shoulder and go, what are you doing, dude? And like it's not going to, like, I don't know, you prepare yourself for these things. That's part of it. Okay. It's not, I know you could throw me in a theater stand-up comedy show tomorrow in front of 2,000 people or whatever. I'll go do my show. If you took some first-year comedian and threw him up in that, he's going to like freeze in the headlights because he hasn't built up to that process. So all I'm saying is that I do think these guys got in like a room with Donald Trump, which none of us saw coming, way too early, way too unprepared. I do also think maybe you guys might think this is a little bit of a low blow, but I got to say, there's something about being like in a financial position where you're just like, yo, I don't know. For me, it was always just easy. And I think it's because I had built up to that position and I was in a financial position to just be like, okay, when Rogan and Tucker and all these guys and all the guys, if you think about like the media apparatus that got Trump into the White House, the guys like Andrew Schultz and Theo Vaughn and Joe Rogan and Tucker Carlson and probably somewhat others that I'm missing. But these are people who aren't just people I have like a very close personal relationship with, like good friends of mine, but they're people that I legitimately have like influence with. Like they really like what I have to say. And they're really like, yo, I think this Dave guy is getting it right. Have you heard what he said about this? And like, I blow their mind when I talk to him. And then they keep talking about what I said for episodes later. And, it's like, and so as they were all supporting him and the Libertarian Party had essentially thrown its support behind him. And then Kamala Harris is out there, campaigning with Liz Cheney. And then it was like, to me, it was kind of like, all right, look, I think the best play here right now is to support Donald Trump and then use all the influence I have to try to influence this in the best possible way, which I always knew was a losing game. But it was like, hey, what I have is not nothing. And it's better to try this than to not try this. I was very clear about this on my show. I go, the benefits of Donald Trump being in there are like, it's going to destroy the corporate media apparatus. It's going to make the new podcast thing the mainstream media. And also that I think this media will turn against him, and I will use all of my influence to make sure they do when he starts really messing up, if he does. Because that now, to some degree, the people could actually have a little bit of pressure on the government for the first time. And this might be an opportunity. Now, okay, you could say I was wrong for supporting him. Although exactly what I thought would happen did happen, is that the media apparatus that got him elected is turned against him now. But I was just in enough of a position where I don't, people could say Dave's grifting. I don't have to grift off this. I could support Donald Trump or not support Donald Trump. It doesn't mean anything to my bottom line. It doesn't mean anything to like what my next position will be or what my next thing. I'm just going to keep doing what I do regardless. And so I just think that it's a tough game. I know I've said this to you before, but like, I've said this to Michael Heiss and Scott Horton and a bunch of people like that before. I was like, man, I wish, and I used to say this back in the Mises Caucus takeover days, that I wish I just had like $100 million just so I could put like everyone on the payroll and just to be like, say, everyone's covered. You don't have to worry about money. So now let's just think about like, what is the best thing to do here? Because when people do have to think about their own self-interest, I think it can be very corrupting. And I think that when you get in there and like, when your own economic interests, when your own like, potential career interests get very tied up in you having, especially working with a guy like Donald Trump, who like 100% loyalty is required. That is a very dangerous game to get into. And then the other thing is that I guess in a sense that to all of the people who were critics of the Mises Caucus, and particularly to the people who were critics of the strategy to support Donald Trump, which was always a very debatable strategy, although I think it's debatable at the time, at least. To those guys, I do feel like I, in some weird way, do owe it to them to be very clear that like, hey, I may have been on board with the plan, but I meant what I was saying at the time. And I am not saying what Austin is saying here now. Like, just to be very clear, like that is not representative of the Mises Caucus, broadly speaking. And in fact, he is maybe the only person who is associated with the Mises Caucus who you would even hear saying like what he's saying there. Like I'm not hearing Angela say what he's saying there, and I'm certainly not hearing like any of the rest of us saying that. I would venture to say that 99% of the people who were involved, either sympathetic to or in or around the Mises Caucus, are way past completely done with Donald Trump. Do you think that's a fair statement to make? Because I certainly do.
Yeah, I think it's fair. I think the most I've seen is people saying, well, we don't regret voting because, it was just the best option at the time, and kind of similar to what you say, where it's like, we don't view voting in quite the same way. For me, it's always been a bit more because I'm probably more in the minority of the Mises circles, where I've always been more hesitant to, like, I understand the arguments about immigration restriction, but I've always been more a bit like uneasy about that. And for me, it was like, okay, I will accept that just like every administration sucks on immigration from my perspective, then like Trump at least like stopping mass migration, because I'm not in favor of mass migration, even though I'm not really in favor of mass deportations either. But I was like, fine, I'm going to compromise.
That's a totally reasonable position. You don't have to, it doesn't have to be one or the other. Yeah.
Right. And I thought like, I'm going to kind of like, hold my nose and do this, because I was like, I have some reason to believe that maybe some positives will come out of this. And the worst case scenario felt like it would be closer to Trump first term, which I was like, well, I know what that is. And it's not perfect or great, but it's better than 4 more years of, Biden or 4 years of Harris.
Yeah.
But then when it gets this bad, to think that on top of the fact that all the Mises Caucus type people would have been just motivated by the foreign policy stuff alone to criticize it. But then for me, it's like, I voted for this guy, and not only is he bad on the stuff I knew he's going to be bad on, but the stuff where I had even a shred of hope that he might just be, again, like mediocre, like not even good, like not the worst. And now he's like, wow, he's like, he's competing for the worst in my lifetime now.
Right. Oh yeah. I mean, well, look, I mean, again, you're talking about like the information we had at the time. And look, it obviously is true that there was a little bit of room. First of all, again, you cannot overstate how insane the Democrats had been for the previous 15 years, it totally made sense for us to celebrate the fact that the culture was shifting away from all that stuff. I don't even mean anything about politics. I just mean the culture shifting away from like, we were like kind of staring down the barrel of going down this very weird Maoist, woke, your neighbor rats you out for committing a microaggression type society. And to see all of that just get rejected, it really did feel to me, and I still defend that, the cultural aspect of it, as like a movement of the people against the elites forcing the ruling government associated elites forcing this artificial culture down the people's throat. And so there was that going on. And then also, look, Donald Trump, they had tried to throw him in jail, maybe tried to assassinate him, who knows exactly what. There's some pretty big questions about that one still. And then he's got Tulsi Gabbard, he puts it the DNI, and he's got all this. And even like, as I was saying before, this was, and look, I never really overplayed this as too much of a moment, but when I launched, as it was me, by the way, who launched that Stop Pompeo campaign, I got everyone on board with it. That was I was on the phone with Tucker and Candace and Rogan and all these people and going like, yo, dude, this is what we should do now. There's like literally, I was doing the election day before Donald Trump had won. That morning, I was calling every influential person I could and going, hey, if he wins, like I think he's going to win tonight, our thing should be for in the whole like period from now until election day should be no Mike Pompeo in the administration, because Pompeo had spoke at Trump's last campaign event and of course had been his Secretary of State in his first administration. And I was like, yo, keep this guy out of there. And then so we started this whole no Pompeo thing. And then Donald Trump posts this letter about how Mike Pompeo and Nikki Haley will not be a part of this administration. And this was probably my peak of hope for the Trump presidency. And I still was very cautiously optimistic. But then that happened after the letter comes out. I had a tweet where I go, that's amazing. At this point, I'll be honest, I've never really done this before, but I was just going like, okay, I'm kind of playing a different game now. I'm trying to just use as much influence as I have. Never really thought I'd have as much as I did in that moment. But I go, okay, Mr. President, amazing letter. So wonderful, like, because it's the only way to get through to Trump, right? Is to like be really like over the top. So tremendous. And then I go, but listen, that's not enough. We need to make sure no neocons are in this administration at all. Keep them all out. And then Donald Trump Jr. quote tweets me and goes, 100%, I'm on it. And that was the thing where you're like, whew, all right. I mean, hey, now, if anyone wants
to argue, all the Ron Paul "it's happening" memes go
right now. Look, obviously, none of this worked out. It did not happen. It did. But if anyone wants to argue with me that in that moment, having that chance, I shouldn't have gone, let's try. Let's try that. What else you got? Who else has that? As Thomas Sowell used to say, everything is compared to what? What plan you got? Is it Michael Rechtenwald or Chase Oliver? Or is it maybe I should keep doing this? Like, I don't know. It just seemed like the obvious, like, well, let me at least try to do this. Now, again, I could go on forever about what we could have thought, what could have been, what ended up happening. But the bottom line is this, right? I've been on in the last month. I've been on Rogan's show. I've been on Tucker's show. I've had 2 Piers Morgan shows that I think have done like millions of views, and I've done my own show, which at this point is like a top 15 news show in America.
I bet Shapiro gave you more airtime too.
And then also I've also done the Ben Shapiro show. I wasn't exactly on it, but I will take it. Like on my IMBD, I think there should be an appearance on the Ben Shapiro show.
Yes.
But so just my point is just this: on every single one of those shows, I'm not saying anything about any of that. The only thing I'm saying is how against this administration I am, how terrible this war is, how Donald Trump has destroyed his coalition. Like, all I'm doing is just blasting him, because none of that really matters. Me trying to prove that, no, I wasn't actually wrong. You know what? Like, the thing I'm going to say in public, when I go on big shows, when I go on Breaking Points or whatever, I go, yep, I was wrong. Sorry. He should be impeached. He should be in prison. Because, like, it's like the most important thing can't be to go, no, I wasn't wrong. I was right. And I got to say, man, again, I'm not, even to my point before where like you were saying, oh, look, how many people haven't learned their lesson? And I'm like, no, but look how many people have learned their lesson. So I'm not trying to say that this is all the libertarians or this is all the LP members, but the amount of people who only care about saying, I told you so, is just, it's enough to make you want to never be associated with the entire thing again. That like, and I, you know, there was this one, while we're talking about all this stuff, and I won't even name the person because I just can't, but this one person who, in the LP, who's been, I guess, kind of a fixture of the LP for a while. And I just saw, she tweeted, I was just like, eviscerating Trump on something. And it was like a super viral tweet, you know, that I had where I'm just trashing him for the war in Iran. And she goes, you voted for Trump. Sit down. And you're like, so that's what you'd have me be? That's what you'd have me do right now? Is sit down. That's what you'd have. Rather than being like one of the loudest voices opposing this thing in like, it's like, so what do you really care about? What are you even really motivated? Oh, you're motivated by like how you were right about the last LP drama. Like, who cares? And like, maybe you were, but like, who cares? Dude, there's like kids. There's like 160 girls who just got eviscerated while I'm writing this tweet. That's what matters, not this. And so I will say, man, I think, haven't we always, I think both me and you, since I've known you, which has been a little while at this point now, and that we've always been kind of like, that's always been like one of our kind of like core messages is like, guys, keep in mind the big picture here. Like, we're here for a reason. And I do think there's part of that is because you come at this from like a Christian libertarian perspective and not just a libertarian perspective. And I think that part of that is that I think being a devout Christian, as you are, keeps you connected to always being focused on like what the most important thing is here. Like there's something of the nature of Christianity that goes like, yeah, but you're always like, there are these things, but then we're always focused on like the highest thing, right?
Well, right. And so
that's like,
I think that's kind of what's missing in a lot of the libertarian world, and it's missing in just the world in general, is this like, you know, there are some things which are just differences of like policy. Right. But you can be motivated by the same underlying ethic, which the ethic isn't even the non-aggression principle, in my opinion. It's something that's like even more fundamental than that. Like, we were talking about this last time when we hung out, when I went out to see one of your shows, about this like this brutalism that's on the right, where it's like, even if you think that like you have to do some immigration stuff, the fact that there were right wingers who were just like, you know, cheering on, you know, people being brutalized or even shot and killed in, you know, these ICE protests and riots and things that were happening, right? And then that gets ramped up when all this war starts breaking out, and it's like it's frustrating when it's like in both worlds I'm in, there are a lot of good people, and I don't want to like discount that. I don't want to like say, oh wow, all Christians are pro-death or all libertarians are like,
of course,
yeah. But there is a disturbing amount in both of my worlds of where people have sort of like, you know, different types of, well, sometimes it's ideological possession and sometimes it's like political tribal possession, but it's this sort of like no longer caring about human beings. And that's like, especially for, you know, the conservatives and Christians, you know, who have made in my entire lifetime, and maybe rightfully so, have made abortion their number one issue. That like, I only vote on abortion if the candidate is pro-life. Like, I know people who actually would agree with almost everything we've said in this show about Donald Trump, but they were like, but I voted for him because like he wasn't even a good pro-life candidate, to be honest. But comparatively, he's like,
I mean, he got Roe v. Wade overturned when no one else did, ironically, even though he's the only guy whose his favorite verse in the Bible is all of them.
Yeah, right. But just the point being that like they're like, I know he's a horrible person, but I'm going to vote for him because of the abortion thing. It's okay. But then like I saw a mutual friend of ours, Captain in Capistan, and a few others when I titled this episode about
that guy.
Which I love him too. But he kind of critiqued my framing of this episode about like, is the right actually pro-life?
Oh yeah, I saw that. I didn't understand what his I didn't understand what he was saying when he said that.
Well, and I think
he seemed to almost be taking it from the pro-choice position that, oh, so you're straw manning that the pro-life people are the only ones who believe in life or something like that. But I was like, no, what we're saying is that the justification for being pro-life was always saying that a life is a life, and an innocent life is an innocent life, and you can't be for a policy that takes innocent life. Like taking innocent life is evil. And now, if that's your standard, then man, how can you possibly, sit here and go, look, like, and by the way, I agree with you on that standard that I think, yes, I don't even like any of these terms like fetus or unborn or anything like that. Like it's a baby. You have a baby. I've had 2 of them inside my wife, and that was a baby inside my wife. I remember sitting there. I remember with my first child, I remember, literally my wife was like 3 days past her due date. And then we were at this OB appointment and they were like, well, we're going to induce labor. And I didn't even know that was a thing at the time. And I was like, wait, what do you mean you're going to induce labor? Like, what? They go, we don't let you go more than a week over at this point. And I'm like, yeah, but like she was 3 weeks late. I was 3 weeks late. We've been talking to our moms about like when they were, and they're like, oh yeah, they used to do that, but we don't do that anymore. So we just had my daughter that day because doctors decided that she wouldn't have come for a few more days. You know what I mean? Or whatever, a week or whatever. It's like they decided that day. She wasn't unborn then and born now. She was my daughter. The baby that I held in my arms would have still been in my wife's belly had we been doing this 30 years earlier. And so I don't even like, yes, I believe abortion is killing a baby, but like, I also believe that dropping a Tomahawk missile on a girl's school is killing a bunch of babies. Like, why is it, how can you have this like firm, pure, like if you're going to be, and look, we could get into, there's different schools of thought on like the exceptions to being pro-life. And I'm not even taking, I myself struggle with some of the exceptions sometimes or whatever, but like there are pro-lifers in this country who will go, hey, I know that you're 11 and I know you were raped by your uncle. And I know that, but we are going to force you to carry that baby to term because as terrible as that is, you cannot kill an innocent baby. Like this baby that's now been created, and look, I'm not even trying to trash the person who has that perspective. I don't know. That is an impossible situation, like those real edge fringe cases that are not the overwhelming majority of abortions. Because it's something like that. You can see both sides of that. If you can't see both sides of that, there's a problem with you. Like I'm not saying you can't come down on one side of that, but if you can't see that there is a fucking issue to saying we're going to force you to carry this baby to term even though you don't want to, when you didn't even but that requires underage and non-consent and all these things. But you're going to look at that, but you can't go, oh, but hey, if there's one terrorist there, we can just kill 5 innocent people to get that one terrorist. I'm sorry. That is absolutely, as I told Charlie Kirk and his audience, they're just absolutely incompatible positions. And if you are okay with the war version of that, then you are not really pro-life. Right. You're anti-abortion. You're anti-abortion maybe, but you are not pro-life. And so make whatever anti-abortion arguments you want to make, but don't give me any of this like sanctity of life stuff. Don't take away all your strongest arguments because you don't actually believe that if your policy, like again, being very, very specific here, because when you launch a policy like, say, Israel's, don't call it a genocide, Israel's totally not genocide in Gaza, or you launch a policy like Donald Trump's defensive war of necessity in Iran, like whatever you want to call it, you launch this policy knowing innocent people will die as a result of this. So maybe you're going, well, hey, if it kills, let's give a ratio that they've never succeeded in achieving ever. If it kills 10 bad guys for every one innocent person that it kills, then it's okay. Okay, then you're not a pro-life absolutist anymore. I'm sorry, right. Even if you accept that.
Yeah, because it's the same thing as saying, well, yeah, abortion's tragic, but like if the baby's going to be born and not have a mother and a father and get into the system, like, you know, and there's too many babies and the system can't support it, that's a consequence we just can't uphold. Like no pro-life conservative or Christian would accept that argument when it came to being like, well, we just have to accept abortion. It's tragic, but like it's just like this brutal aspect of life. You just have to, let some babies be killed in order to like, and even when they go common good, even when they go like, when they'll say abortion is murder, right? Like, what are they doing? They're going, remove the euphemism. Taxation is theft. It's the same thing. Stop calling it something else. Well, what is collateral damage? I mean, it's all the same as calling it abortion. That's not murder. That's collateral damage. That's not innocent people dying. That, it's like, no, if you don't have this principle that, okay, you're not, there are just certain things that you're not allowed to do, which essentially is the pro-life argument as best articulated by the best pro-life defenders, that the argument is like, look, I don't care what your situation is. Okay, I understand you're not ready for this baby. I understand that you're broke. I understand that the dad left you. I understand that, whatever the situation might be, all the exceptions to, that abortion that you could think of even. Okay, but the pro-life position is that all might be very real. You don't get to murder a baby. Right.
And so like, that's okay. There's a problem. We got this regime that chants death to America. Okay. I'm totally with you. That's a problem. Okay. They've enriched uranium up to 60%. We're worried they could go up. Yep. Totally. Hey, guess what? You don't get to murder a baby. I don't know what it's the identical position.
Yep. No, 100%. And what's really like, I want to be respectful of your time. I think we'll end on this and go through the super chats quick. But like,
sure.
What the thing I'm frustrated with.
I'm good. Wife and kids are in bed.
Okay. Well, I'm ready. We'll go for a little bit longer. But it's like I'm sure, I don't know if you saw this, but my pastor actually, of all people, texted me this morning, where Vance's comments at the TPUSA event, where he's responding.
Oh yeah, I think you sent me this morning. Yeah.
I sent it to you after my pastor sent it to me, and he's just like, listen, like all the bending over backwards to defend Trump's policies and stuff like that, and then saying, well, I wish the Pope would just focus on moral issues and not weigh in on politics. And I'm just like, and it'd be one thing for like, I don't know, imagine if Mike Huckabee or someone else was in that position. And I'm like, okay, so you're not a Catholic, right? You're just like a, dispensational evangelical, right? Okay. But when a Catholic, right? When a Catholic who's written a book about his conversion to Catholicism, right, is then saying like, well, the Pope shouldn't weigh in on matters of, politics and just morality, beyond just the logical contradiction of just like, you're saying politics don't cross over with morality. And then it's just like, what you're saying that there's not a great like long tradition in Christianity, especially in Catholicism, of theologians and writers talking about when the government should be and should not be allowed, when it's justified to go to war. Like
not just yeah, dude, it's not just that politics don't cross over with morality. It's that wars of aggression don't cross over with. Listen, no one can argue. Again, it's like these all these things like the just war theory of Christianity, or even the distinction between a war of choice versus a war of necessity, a war of aggression versus a war of defense. These are things that we all read about in books for years. And I mean, I don't know, maybe people used to actually think about more, but no one even knows what these terms mean anymore. But like, this is objectively a war of aggression. We were not attacked by Iran, even if we decided we think it's, the country that has enough nuclear weapons to blow up the entire world like 100 times over, and the country that secretly has nuclear weapons and is not a member of the Non-Proliferation Treaty decided that we suspect this other country of developing nuclear weapons, even though all our own intelligence agencies say they're not. Like, this is clearly a war of aggression. The idea that this is outside the realm of any Christian leader to comment on is
not to mention
is absurd. No, it's so disgusting because JD Vance, if you had asked JD Vance 2 years ago, do you think it's appropriate for the Pope or another Christian leader to comment on wars? He would have said, of course. Of course it is. That JD Vance would have talked specifically about, Donald Trump in a weird way is Donald Trump. Like, what we were talking about before, he's such a terrible person that that's all baked into the price, is obviously he's Donald Trump. Yeah, he's the grab him by the whatever guy. Okay, we all know that. He's the, cheating on his wife with a porn star guy. He's the bragging about how he gets to go into the dressing rooms in the Miss America pageant because he owns the place. That's him. Okay, but so Donald Trump, would say for years that that you remember, if you've seen any of the old tweets where he's like, Obama's gonna invade Iran just to distract from how terrible he is. Marco Rubio would be a tool of Sheldon Adelson if he were to ever take his money. Blah blah blah. It's like, okay, so he could, I'm gonna build a wall. Where's that wall? I'm never gonna take money. Remember that was his promise? Forever. You remember that? I've been trying to remind people of this recently. Remember in 2016, his big promise was he's never going to take money from anyone, and Marco Rubio would be a tool of Sheldon Adelson because he needs his money, but Trump doesn't. Okay. Anyway,
your brother lied us into war. I mean, it's just
just all this stuff, right? So but Donald Trump also is Donald Trump. But then you think about how Tulsi sold no war with Iran t-shirts. How many times JD Vance said he had learned the lesson of the terror wars and all this stuff. So it's like, all you guys are going into this knowingly lying. No, it's in some ways, even though this is not turned into the catastrophe that Iraq or Afghanistan was, or even Libya or even Syria yet. We are not at the point where you could put up or Yemen or Somalia. We're not at the point where you could put up numbers like, hey, 500,000 people died here. I don't know. We really don't know. Maybe you guess 10,000 people have died so far total. I don't know, something in that ballpark, which is terrible enough. And the global economy has been fair, and we've wasted $100 billion. But look, it's not like trillions of dollars and 700,000 people or something like that quite yet. But in some ways, this is worse because all of you so clearly knew. Like you did this knowing in every sense of the word. There is not one person, including Netanyahu and that Mossad guy who, according to the New York Times, was on screen. And then, both of them knew they were lying when they said it. Neither of them were convinced that that there was a low chance of this turning into a disaster. They've seen the whole global war on terrorism. They knew this was. Do you think Israel doesn't realize that Iran was a more formidable opponent than the rest? Obviously they knew. Ratcliffe obviously knew. Tulsi Gabbard obviously knew. Donald Trump, JD Vance, Marco Rubio, all of that. Like there is just no excuse in the world left for them launching this, knowing completely well that at least there was a high likelihood that we're just going to get a bunch of people killed and get nothing accomplished for that. And again, the one thing I like about this moment in the midst of all this tragedy, which is weirdly how the universe works, in the midst of tragedy, there's always kind of like so maybe not always, but sometimes there's a silver lining. And the silver lining is that what a clear line in the sand to draw. Okay. Yeah. Anyone who can still be on board with this, you're over there. Anyone not on board with this, you're over here. And, even back to Austin's thing before where he's still trying to draw these other lines. Oh, but you'll talk to Anna Kasparian and you'll talk to this Chinese professor or you'll talk to this whatever. It's like, yeah, dude, I'm sorry. The line that I just split right there is not, it ain't ANCAP or minarchist, and it ain't even libertarian or authoritarian. And it's like, who's against this and who's not? And if you want to say, oh no, you're playing with the other, out group because they believe in universal health care, so blue communism, like, okay, yeah. What is the war in Iran? It's communism. It's the worst form of communism, dude. The worst, the absolute worst form of total socialism, total government is war, which is all communism really is war constantly. And that's our socialized force of killers are going to go over and bring hell to mankind. Think about that on the Christian Libertarian channel. Bring hell to those who have not been damned by God, to those who are only damned by man for the crime of living in the wrong place under the wrong government. They bring a living hell to them. That's what we've done.
I don't know if I've ever posed this to you before, but you've probably heard, or if you haven't, I'll say it here. There's this one passage of scripture in Matthew 23. It's referred to as the sheep and the goats, but Jesus says that that which you have done to the least of these, you've done unto me. He's talking about how if you saw someone who was hungry and you fed them, and you saw someone who was homeless and you gave them shelter, all these things. And then he also gives the inverse, and when you didn't do these things, you didn't do it unto me. And his point is that we should be looking for everyone's made in the image of God, and for those who are suffering, for those who are in the worst circumstances, like Jesus and God they are very concerned with how you treat those people, because it's almost like if you want to say you love me, then I have to see that in how you treat these people. And then I look at our government, and these are people who are claiming to be Christians and Catholics and all that. And what are they doing to the least of these? They're dropping bombs on them, and they're causing them to go through, because of the sanctions and whatnot, to be low on food, to be in hospital situations where, we think about what's going on in Cuba right now, where the hospitals are losing power, and people who are on life support and ventilators and whatnot. And you just think about that, and you're like, so what you did to the least of these, what you've done unto Jesus, according to this passage, is violence and bringing, as you said, hell upon these people. And I just, it's so frustrating, because I get this constant accusation that Christian libertarianism, you're trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. And I'm like, not if you actually just, I don't know, read the Bible and read the church fathers and read. That's kind of why I did this whole project of this book, because I'm one of the questions that people pose, or that you get a lot, is well, what are we supposed to do about urban warfare and human shields? Just let people die? And it's just and they just do a pure consequentialist argument. And I'm just I don't know. And I go to Vance and be like, okay, you're a Catholic. The Catholic Saint Augustine said, he had this analogy, which is if you chop down a tree where there's nobody around and no one normally is, and then you accidentally, the person just came out of nowhere and the tree fell on them, that's a tragedy, but you weren't trying to kill them. Right? Versus if you chop a tree, if you knock a building down or chop a tree down where there's a bunch of people, you killed them. And I think I understand, I think you would even understand, accidents happen in war, which is why, by the way, you should avoid war at all costs. Because once you unleash hell on earth, it's kind of hard to know what's going to happen. But it'd be one thing if it's you could see a government and a military were just trying as hard as they could to avoid collateral damage, and then there were just unfortunate incidents where they actually did have the wrong intel, or they didn't know someone was somewhere. That would still be a tragedy, and I think you'd have to call for some sort of investigation and some sort of accountability. But it's a lot different to be we're not holding a standard of perfection. We're just saying you can't willfully go and just level entire buildings where civilians are, just because it's harder. And what makes me mad is that this is what Christian theologians have been saying for thousands of years. And but then modern Christians today will, and again, if someone's not a Christian, I guess I have less to be upset about them. But especially when Trump's freaking comparing himself to Jesus,
Just a doctor.
Yeah,
Dude, that's crazy.
Jesus.
That's crazy that you got Jesus out of that image, man. That was a clear doctor, if ever I've seen one. Well, okay, so let me say this. So first of all, I do think there's for people who are going to say like, oh, there's like fitting Christianity into libertarianism is like a square peg in a round hole or whatever. And I say this as someone who's not a Christian, but I just kind of think objectively, like I'm not a Christian, but I have a lot of respect for Christianity. But I think that, I mean, all of the principles of natural rights, individualism, laissez-faire, free market capitalism, all arose in Christendom. And so if you're going to say that like these things are totally incompatible, it seems to me that like right away you got a little bit of an issue there because okay, well, what's more compatible with it than that? And even when you say that, like, look, there is something, and I even think there's something about like the rabbinic Jewish tradition where a lot of times like libertarians are almost, there's a real similarity between Christian thought leaders, rabbinic Jews, where you're always thinking about these scenarios. Okay, but what would be moral in this scenario? And what would be moral? Okay, let's take this to another abstract scenario and think, well, what would happen if this happened and this happened and this happened? And in a way, I'm not even like maybe as, and perhaps this is what some of that Zulu debate was about. I'm not as doctrinaire in all that stuff as I once was. I go, oh, look, I'm open to, even if you were to say like, if you could come up with some scenario where you go, look, there's a bomb headed our way, and we know that that's going to kill 20,000 of our people. And the only way to stop that is to drop a bomb on top of that bomb, just theoretically, that will kill 20,000 of their people. And so a lot of those are innocent people. We're choosing their people over our people. And we could, like some trolley cart situation almost in a way, I'd almost be willing to listen to that and go kind of in the same spirit of the argument I was making with Zulu, that like, well, look, obviously, if I got to punch this guy in the face to save my little kid's life, I'm going to punch him in the face to save my little kid's life. But that doesn't mean that it wasn't immoral for me to punch him in the face in a sense. He still didn't deserve that. The same damage has been done. So I'm not saying this principle isn't universal. I'm just saying that, like, in this instance, even though the principle is the same as it is, the other side is so much bigger that, like I'm willing to entertain the nuance of all of this stuff and even maybe agree with some of that. But so when you say, even your thing where people go, well, what do you do when someone's hiding behind a baby? Someone grabs a baby and now they're just allowed to murder whoever they want to. It's like, well, what's the scenario exactly? Because, hey, if someone comes up, if I'm here in my home with my weaponry and someone comes up with a baby on their chest, but they're pointing a gun at my baby and about to fire a bullet, I think I will shoot back, and man, I hope it doesn't hit that baby, but I am going to defend my baby because but if that guy shoots and misses and then runs back into an abandoned building and like my baby is no longer at threat, but I got a clear shot on him, but it's going to maybe take out the baby, then you wait and hold out your position and you do not shoot, because no, in this situation, it's kind of in a way, this is what libertarians do. I think we're the only ones who like specialize in this stuff, but like, no, it's so obvious in that situation. No, you don't have the right to say, but he shot at my baby previously. And so I can't, because you understand, like there's an innocent life in the balance here. And in that case, you go, well, we got to wait. You can wait him out. You can negotiate, you can, there's several options, but collapsing the building on top of that guy and the baby, and then turning around and going, we have a 1-to-1 ratio, which is the best ratio you can get in modern warfare, is just not a serious, acceptable moral defense. And it's part of the reason why I like bringing up, as you started the show with guys like Ben Ferguson, like the just war theory of Christianity, and then the constitutional system that the framers laid out. Because even though I probably don't completely agree with either of those, I'm a lot closer to war, peace, and the state than I am to the Constitution or the just war theory of Christianity, to be honest. But at least those were great minds attempting to grapple with this very complex problem. My issue with both of those solutions is that I think they're a little too war happy. Like, you really got to actually think about this much more detail. You do not, like Rothbard said, like, the starting point is you do not have a right to kill person C because person A aggressed against person B. That is my starting point with war. Now, if you want to throw me some complex scenarios, I'm willing to think about it. But when you're talking about an Israeli prison where some prisoners broke out and killed a bunch of Israeli citizens, and then you think you have the right to just starve them of electricity and food and shelter and rain essentially carpet bombs all over them? No, you're not even in the realm of what could even plausibly be morally defensible.
Right. And I to your point, I can agree with that insofar as, like, if someone is going to say, like, that they're not a Christian or that they don't follow a certain Christian tradition, it's like, okay, that's a conversation that can be had. And I can even pull myself outside of my framework and hear what you're saying and go, yeah, listen, like, I think we'd all be tempted in situations that are morally dubious because it's just like a doomsday, like, horrible trolley cart situation, to be like, you don't necessarily have the time to, like, think about what's the right situation, and you might go with what seems to be the more the best consequentialist solution to that.
Right.
But I think the point is, like, our governing leaders aren't even doing that. They're not even doing that. Like, I can't even compromise with them on that, because they're just basically like, what makes me mad is that they are invoking the language and the sort of, like, they're taking Christianity and wearing it as a skin suit to justify their actions. And that's what gets me livid. It's one thing if someone just wants to own, I'm not a Christian and I'm operating on these moral frameworks where a government should do. Okay, fine. We'll have that conversation.
It's interesting. No, it's interesting you say that, because I literally just said on the show last night, I was talking about how they always wear libertarianism or liberalism as a skin suit. And but you're absolutely right that those are the two things. It's very interesting. I've never really even thought about that before, but being on the Christian Libertarian show, that is an interesting point to be made, that those are the two things that the US regime always wraps themselves in. I always use the example of how they call the income tax voluntary compliance, on the IRS, or at least they used to. I don't know if they still say that, but they just say voluntary compliance. Oh, is it voluntary? Because they even know, like, to the American sensibilities, that's what makes it sound like, oh, it's okay because it's voluntary compliance, or Operation Iraqi Freedom. Even with that, the thing is always, oh, it's liberty. It's like, well, hey, if and of course every last person doing that had a cross around their neck and swore that they love Jesus, and and so you're almost kind of like, well, hey, if our ideas are so good that you got to use them all the time, maybe follow them every now and then, like maybe once, don't do the exact opposite of what we are. And I do, and there's something, Tucker Carlson had that piece recently where he didn't call Donald Trump the Antichrist, but he sure, made you ponder the question for a little bit. And, like, I don't know, I'm not saying anything like that, but there is something about, like, the very nature of, like, wrapping yourself in the skin suit of Jesus Christ in some ways, quite blatantly, as you just said, on like memes like that, or just the language that he uses, and then committing, like, these horrific crimes against humanity. And even if you don't want to say, like, even if you want to look at it from a totally secular atheist lens, for the libertarian portion of the audience here who's not the Christian part, okay, but, like, couldn't you see where wrapping yourself in libertarian language while imposing the most severe tyranny would be a particular profound crime? Like, there'd be something even more particularly evil about, like, pretending that you are the savior while you are actually the opposite of that. Like, on some level, even if you don't believe in Christianity, you would recognize that like they're touching on a very specific, profound crime there. Like there's something about like the wolf in sheep's clothing, or the grandmother at the end of Little Red Riding Hood, who is, the wolf pretending to be the grandma. Like that is a particular thing. And I don't know.
It's sort of so remember your immigration debate with the guy from Cato, forgetting his name right now.
Alex Norwasta or something.
Norwasta,
like
yeah. So you made this point, which I actually agree with, which was that like if your premise is everything should be voluntary, and then the policy you propose to follow is something that's like forcing everyone to accept something that is demonstrably against their will, then like check your premises. You might have gotten something wrong there. It's like if you're claiming to be like a follower of Jesus Christ, and the model he laid was like laying your life down and picking up your cross and all this stuff, and then your conclusion is, and this is why we have to kill 500,000 Iraqi children. I'm just like, I don't know. You might have done that wrong.
By the way, I thought that was the whatever. I don't know why I guess just because it was the last time I was on your show, but or one of the last times I was on your show. But I thought that was a real interesting moment in the debate with Zulu, which I'm not sure that accomplished anything. I think everybody who likes me came out of that like, it seemed to me like the response was everyone who liked me was like, oh my God, Dave just dismantled this guy. And everyone who liked him was like, Dave didn't even bring an argument or anything. And like, so I don't know, but I thought it was a real interesting point in that debate when I asked him, something along the lines of like, I went, wait, so like, but like, let's just say that you knew if you implemented all of your principles, even though you're completely convinced that they're deduced from first principles and they're totally logically irrefutable, but you knew that if you implemented them, all of us die immediately or something like that. And he went, well, I would probably go back to the starting board. And I was like, oh, that sounds a lot like if libertarianism led to some terrible outcome, I would reject libertarianism, which was like the whole thing and I did think there was some, because on some level, even the most hardcore theory bro has to admit that if your theory put into practice results in the exact antithesis of the whole reason you have a theory, then you would have to conclude from that you got something wrong. Like, it doesn't mean you have to conclude from that theory is bullshit. Obviously, theory is obviously still important, but you would have to conclude. From that I missed something along the way. Like, that more likely my brain is not infallible, and I have to rethink something in this theory, because obviously, if the result is this, and so in a similar sense. Yeah, there is something where like if you're starting from the point of I'm not an expert in Christianity. I'm not trying to lecture anyone who I think a lot of people listening to the show probably know a lot more about it than me. But from my very basic understanding of it, part of the essential message of Christianity is like, look, the rule up until now was an eye for an eye. The rule up until now was someone does something to you, you go get vengeance on them. But I'm telling you, like, God has come back to tell you that actually the rule is no more fighting at all. And you have to even love that person who did something, the person who did something that really deserves to be hated, you still love that person. That's the answer. And that's salvation. And that's what this whole thing is about. And like, look, there is something I find about that idea in Christianity, the idea of like loving the person who's really done something worth hating them for. That is, it's a little uncomfortable to me, but I also have had it explained, particularly by Daryl Cooper. But a few Christian friends of mine, but there's a few Christian friends of mine who have explained that in a way where like, I really do see the beauty in that. But also, I think there's something about Christianity where it's almost like baked in that the assumption is that we are setting a standard that you will not live up to. You're not good enough to be a Christian. Like that's almost like the first rule of being a Christian is that, first of all, this is a test that you will fail. And that every time you fail this, your requirement is to kind of feel bad about how you failed that. And then to try to not fail it again, which you will also fail at again, and then repeat like that. And just for that to be your starting point, and then your conclusion is we should wipe all of these people off the face of the earth, where you're like, wait a minute, are you absolutely sure you need to do that? That is me asking Zulu, if you believe that philosophy is for the betterment of man and the understanding of truth and all of this, but you implemented your philosophy and everyone dies immediately, doesn't that prove that your philosophy was wrong? And even he essentially had to go, yeah. And so I would almost say the same thing to Christians. To me, this just seems like it's like I'm not saying this is everything, but the fruit of a tree does to some degree prove the purpose of the tree. Like
that's what Jesus says.
Yeah, right. Like there's well, look, I guess where I'll say it's not true. Again, I think I heard Tucker say this recently, and I thought maybe he said it with like a little bit too much certainty without a little bit of a caveat in it. But he said something like, the effect of a system is the intent. And I would say, I don't know if that's exactly true, because you could start a system with an intent that doesn't end up being the outcome. But I think what's a slightly more accurate statement is that if a system has an outcome and that system is perpetuated and continued, and knowing the outcome still perpetuated and still continued, then I think there is a point where you can go, yeah, I think the outcome is the intent of that. Like at a certain point, you're like, yeah, that is there is a truth that is revealed in, for example, if me and you would probably, we're ANCAPs in our heart of hearts. Maybe some ANCAPs will argue that there's been an anarcho-capitalist society at one point or the other, but really, there has not really been an anarcho-capitalist modern society that's been successful. But let's say a few of them really tried, and they all had the exact opposite intended goal of what we wanted. It was just a disaster. Every criticism of anarcho-capitalism that's ever existed came true. Foreign armies invaded. Children weren't protected. The standard of living drastically dropped. Like if that happened 20 times, 40 times, 1,000 times, and we didn't even kind of start questioning everything, at a certain point you'd go like, what do you really stand for here? That now it's fair to question your motivations at a certain point. That's
why like I think as far as the libertarian side, it's like the non-aggression principle is not like my ultimate principle. It's like what I care about is peace and social cooperation. And if, and that's why I think Mises was right that property rights are that which lead to those things. But yeah, if like we ran the test 100 times, 1,000 times, and it was like crap, property rights are leading to constant anyway. Yeah.
Well, I should say all of that. That's not discounting theory at all, and that's not saying if you have an argument that you're like, hey, but you got to contend with this theoretical argument. You still have a really good point. Like that is all still very important. It's just that you also have to accept. Yes. Like essentially, you can't be a complete consequentialist, but you also can't completely reject the importance of what the consequences of any system are.
Yep, 100% agree. All right, let's get through these super chats quick, just to respect people's contributions. AT Alien for $5 says, "I'm pricked up." That's a
very Christian message.
It's a part of the problem inside joke. That's a deep cut.
It is. Took me a while to learn that one.
the entire part of the problem Discord and insiders were just like dying when you read that one comment in the members show. It was just like anyway, no one knows what we're talking about, but it was like it lives in forever in infamy in our circles. Joseph Briggs for $50. Thank you very much for that. Jacob plus Dave, you guys both rock. Thank you very much.
That's very nice.
Free men die free. Sicko Box in the house. Heard this is where the donut homesteads are being auctioned. Yeah, they're just hitting us with all the inside jokes and references today. Donut homesteads. Fear the old blood. What's up, it's Michael? Evening, Jacob and Dave. Hope you are both doing well. Taxation is extortion, and to hell with the Fed and the IRS. Amen to that.
Oh, and
we did this.
YouTube will withhold taxes from that super chat, which is
they
really
will. And we forgot to we're doing it on tax day, right? You know, which
I didn't think about that. That's a good point. I have been thinking about that for a few weeks, but I didn't think about that today. That today is actually the day.
There's some kind of joke there about us both being Jewish and doing this on tax day.
By the way, I don't know. I pay a ridiculous amount of money to my accountant because paying them money, I think, saves you money on the money that I have to pay to other things. And I would rather give him money I'd rather give this Jew money than give the government Jews money. Okay. But he's a better Jew. He doesn't kill anybody. This guy, but I'm always just like, somehow I'm always like the last 3 days of tax day every year. I have like a professional team that I pay really well, but every year on the last 3 days, there's always like, you need this 1099, you need this, or we're going to have to file an extension and it's going to cost this much money. And literally every time. And I actually still forgot that today was the day, but for me, at least, cause I'm like I'm not like an employee. I'm an independent contractor or whatever, or I'm a business owner and whatever. But it's not even April 15th isn't the tough day. The tough day is whenever the day my accountant sends me back what the bill is.
Oh,
and then that's the day when you're just like, man, come on, dude. That's not cool.
I can't even imagine. It's there's all sorts of dumb things that have to because I do like I have a main job and then I have 2 side jobs that I do from home. So my taxes are even just a little complicated, but I can from just that little bit of what I experience, I can imagine yours are, you would.
Oh, they're so look, it sucks every week to have your taxes taken out, but there's a different type of torture that it is to have to add up every individual thing you've done for the year. And then like at the end of the year, they're actually like, give me your money. And I'm like, hey, like every year I have to have a standoff with the government where I'm like, hey, but that's my money. I need it. And they're like, no, we need it more. We got to bomb kids.
We need to build roads and bomb brown people. Sorry, Dave.
Oh.
All right. Michael Libertarian, you can tell Ben is close to Ted Cruz. He's so embarrassingly arrogant and so embarrassingly wrong on everything ever. Yeah, that's what I was. I mean, we already name dropped some of these people, but I was going to say, like, listen, Dave, like my platform was always open. If you just want to debating Zulu and Archie Flowers has to be more entertaining at some point than debating as Adam Sosnick and Ben Ferguson. I mean, come on, let's be real.
I'll say Archie Part 2 does have to happen. Like, it has to happen at some point. And I'm not saying when it has that, but it's like that is Connor Nate Diaz rubber match. Like at some point, obviously, we have to happen. The stars have to align. We got to have a topic, have a reason, but obviously we should do that again at some point. No, listen, man, I don't know. By the way, I love Michael. Michael's great. Michael brought me a nice bottle of whiskey in Maryland at the last show. I was down there, which was very nice. But yeah, I don't know, man. It's so weird at this point because now I'm getting like all types of advice from different people about what I should do and what I shouldn't do. And a lot of people who I really respect very much have told me, they're like, yo, you got to be a lot more selective now about what debates you do because you've become like the guy who's the debate guy and who's arguing for these points. So you got to only do, but I do. And I'm busier than ever. So I don't have time to do everything that I used to, but there is a part of me where like, I just really do have a weakness for like anyone making an argument that I think there's a better argument than being like, no, but like, no, let me say why that's wrong. Come on, let's come on here. I know I can say why that's wrong and why this is right. But I don't know. Trying my best to figure that out.
Like a junkie with debate. You're like, I don't need it. And then you're like, a few hours later,
yeah.
Like, oh, but
you're like, oh man, no, dude. All right, fine. I got to do it. Let's debate someone.
Michael again for $5 said Massey was saying he's going to vote against continuing FISA 702 and MAGA cultists were condemning him. MAGA and the GOP must lose in the midterms. Yeah, and he was also reintroducing the constitutional carry. Like, and we didn't really talk about the Libertarian Party's post about you, but that was just so dumb. It's just like, if you think Trump is like out of control, then it's kind of like, that post was basically like the most charitable interpretation is that it wasn't so much trying to be personal shot at you, but that they've fallen back into that weird, like, beltway libertarian talking point of just like, pretending that you're going to win a bunch of elections, even though when you know you're not going to. Because I'm just like, okay, libertarians aren't taking over, even a state Congress, let alone the federal one. So what's the most realistic path to limiting Trump's power? Well, it would be the Congress, Republicans losing in the midterms and not having a total control in DC.
Yeah. Also the fact that, look, I don't even know. It's so weird because there's so many different camps at this point in the Libertarian Party. And I'm not as involved in the Libertarian Party as I used to be. So like, I don't have my finger on the pulse the same way I did when that was really what my focus was. But so there's, first of all, again, as I mentioned earlier in the show that they're responding to a clip of, I mean, we just eviscerate. I could not have condemned both the Trump administration, the Republican Party, and the Democratic Party more, and also said in the clip that they posted that I'm never voting for any major party candidate again. Maybe if it's Thomas Massey or something like that. Like if a Ron Paul figure runs as a Republican or a Democrat, more likely, obviously, a Republican, then maybe I'd vote for them. But like, I'm not voting for any of them. But I said, there's an argument. That was my quote. There's an argument that it's better if the Democrats win. Obviously, I said there's an argument that we would have been better off with Kamala Harris being president. By the way, there's an argument that it would have been worse. That's what it means when you say there's an argument, right? Like, right. I mean, there's an argument. Maybe Kamala Harris would have gotten in here and we wouldn't be at war with Iran, but we would have a central bank digital currency. Like, we don't know. Maybe that would have been much worse, and an open border, and maybe there would have been 5 factors that made that worse than Trump. But quite possibly, it would have been better. Like, that's also not. So anyway, there's been a couple times where the official Libertarian Party national, account has like criticized me recently, or not recently, but over the last few years. This one just yesterday. What happens is then I get like text messages from people on the LNC in the Libertarian Party. They go, "Hey, I'm so sorry about that. Someone did this. Don't worry about that." Then, as you saw, the message gets deleted because I guess there's some, and I don't know, but there's some internal argument about whether they should be doing this or not. The message I would have for the Libertarian Party, which I just, at this point, I do not know if I can help. And I'm sorry, but it's just, I don't know that there is anything I can do to help this organization. And I do not see any path forward where this organization plays a major role, but I would love to be proven wrong in that. But I would just say, you gotta be a little bit more professional, man. And you guys gotta be able to think about like the most basic strategy. Look, I was, at right after we took over the party in Reno, I asked Angela, I don't know if I've ever told this on your show. I think I've said some of this publicly, but I told Angela at Reno that night after we won the whole thing, I told Angela and I go, listen, this is the only demand I'm going to make after leading this whole charge. And I went, I need the keys to the Twitter.
Yeah.
The Libertarian Party Twitter has to be mine. And I said, I don't care about any of the other social media. Don't embarrass us on there. But Twitter is the one that matters. Like, Twitter isn't the biggest social media platform, but it's the one that is politically relevant. And I'm telling you, I will run this the right way. Like, I will run this the right way. This will be, if there's one thing I know, it's libertarian messaging that works and resonates with people. Like, I'm not up there with the best in many things, but this is what I do. So let me do this. And I got more resistance than I thought I would. But I don't know exactly. She was like, look, it's not that simple. We got to do this whole thing. It was like a couple weeks before I actually got it. And then when I got it, it had to be part of a committee, like team. And I was like, this is not going to work well. I already knew this was going to. But I posted some of the stuff that I posted when we first got it. And also, by the way, was growing the Twitter at like a rapid rate. And then, of course, I grew it to be a bigger Twitter following than my Twitter following. And then, of course, then I stopped doing it. And then, because I couldn't control it. And then anyway, whatever. But the first things I tweeted was, I said something about how, like, Ron Paul and the Mises Institute and all these and Hans Hermann Hoppe and Lou Rockwell have been disrespected by the Libertarian Party in the past. That is no longer the case. The Libertarian Party is now a home for all of those Ron Paul libertarians, and it is also a home for all of the Cato libertarians and all of the Reason libertarians and all that. Like, when I was in charge of that shit, man, and then there were other people on the team who tweeted things that I thought were not right, but whatever. And then it didn't work out. But I'm just saying, when I had that at the culmination of the Libertarian Party wars, I knew, obviously, you can't use this Twitter account to bash anybody. Now, maybe I would have done some things like, when I said, hey, when I said Hans Hermann Hoppe, we recognize as a libertarian hero, I knew that was going to bother some people, but I wasn't picking a fight with those people.
Sure.
Like I wasn't, Like, that's the balance you got to make. So if you wanted to criticize me, you could go, hey, there's this libertarian who's making the exact opposite argument, and we really like this argument that he's making. But you shouldn't be like, I would never have used that account to trash Gary Johnson or even trash Bill Weld, because that's not what the official Libertarian Party account should ever be doing. What are you doing? You don't go out there and bash popular libertarian people. You're trying to convince more people to join your party. And, people can say whatever they want about me and how I've gotten into libertarian wars, which I have. But it's just obvious that that's not what you should do when you're running the official party. You're not even you're not even the Libertarian Party making this statement. You're not even the committee who runs the social media making this statement, because the rest of them are texting me apologizing. You're one guy on a committee who runs the social media thing just saying, we're against Dave. Oh, Dave, you're being crazy for saying a very reasonable thing. That's just not, it's I don't know. It's on a very basic level unprofessional.
The LP will continue to struggle until it stops. And listen, I guess because it's a political party, you can't completely remove the democratic element from it, but it's just so democratized that it's dysfunctional. And also, and now the second thing will not be changed as a consequence of that, but dress codes. I don't know, just that's my starting pitch. Can we just have dress codes at our meetups and conventions? Dude,
isn't there something
lowest of asks?
There's something I've thought this for a while, but there's something about libertarianism, and the people that it attracts, like that, where there's a degree of splitting that goes on, and I can kind of understand why this happens, because libertarianism is kind of like in many ways, it's a binary worldview, that there's aggression and there's non-aggression. There's the market and there's the state. There's the the whole philosophy kind of always enforces that the answer is non-aggression and the problem is aggression, and the answer is privatize it and the problem is publicize it, you know, like the, and okay, like that is true, but there's also that breeds a thing in people where they kind of look at things as black and white. Like there, you know, you either, there was this one, I don't know. I swear I don't know how this video actually made it to me, because it was like, you know, every now and then I'll see a video about me that has 21 views, you know, but like someone's just talking about me. And sometimes I'll be kind of interested. Like if I happen to have a moment in bed and the kids are asleep and all this, I'm like, let's just see what this random person is saying about me. Like, because I don't know, you might learn something from that. It's not the worst thing to hear. But so there was this, this woman, I can't remember her name, but she was talking about, I think it was on your show. I could be wrong about that, but I was talking about how when I was at the Libertarian Party the last time, there was this guy who was wearing like a thong and like his ass was out and he was in this crazy, and he comes over to me and tries to like spark up a debate about immigration. And, you know, he comes over and he goes, you know, I've heard like a few of your like things on immigration, and I really think this. And I think that literally his ass is out. He's in I don't know what, a thong, like his dick and balls are hanging in a little piece of fabric and his ass is out. And he's like, you know, I've heard you talk. And I go, I said, well, you know, I just did a podcast with Bob Murphy on immigration for like 2 hours. If you're interested in my opinion, you can check it out. And he goes, no, I'm interested in a dialogue. And I just was in this weird position where I'm like, yeah, what, dude, I'm not getting into a thing with you right now. And so a member of the Libertarian Party who was at the convention evidently and is friends with that guy made a video, and she goes, hey Dave, who are you? Who are you? You're the comedian who wears a hoodie, who curses, who's, you know, doesn't, who are you to say someone can't, what they have to wear? You're not in a suit and tie. And I remember almost thinking like, wow, this is a real like example of splitting. Like I'm not, too many libertarians get sucked into this thing where it's like, we got to be Rage Against the Machine, or we got to be the, you know, I don't know, the agents in the Matrix or something like that. It's
we got to
like,
be ultra trad calves, or we have to be ultra degenerates.
Listen, man, like, come on. A lot of these things, again, like I know the libertarianism kind of, it breeds splitting. It breeds this false binary, which like there is a very real binary between aggression and non-aggression. I'm just saying that like it breeds this thing where it's like, yes, that is true. It is true that I wear hoodies. It is true that I curse. It is true that and maybe that's the wrong decision. You know, maybe I should have cleaned it up a long time ago. Maybe I should clean it up now. Maybe it's too late for me and I can't clean it up now. But the point is that there's also a big difference between like, I can at least go on very serious, large platforms and convince people that what I have to say is something that should be taken seriously. And a grown man in a thong cannot, like, you know. And so like, again, I'm not saying like the Libertarian Party, I think they should troll, you know, senators and the president, and there's room for humor. And I'm not saying like you got to be super professional, but it's also like, look, the Libertarian Party Twitter account shouldn't be attacking Justin Amash. It shouldn't be attacking Gary Johnson. It shouldn't be attacking like any, because no, that's not the role. And so with all of these things, it's like, look, I know it's not an objective standard. It's a subjective standard, but just be like reasonably professional. And when I say professional, I just mean respectable enough to other grown men that other grown men, and to a lesser extent grown women, could look at you. Sorry, ladies, there's a lot less of you watching than there are men. And, you know, like to have some potential to maybe convince the person who's listening to you that that guy makes a point. That guy's someone I should support. That, you know, that's all I'm saying.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. AT Alien, Trump's great economy for $5. Thank you. Said 40% of Americans don't have $500 in savings, and it costs $300,000 to raise a kid. Now, I will make a slight pushback there, which is that like some of the studies that talk about how much it costs to raise a kid are, I think, a little bit flawed in their like methodologies or whatnot. It does cost a lot to raise a kid and do it well, but like I just, it's two things are true at once. I know the inflationary economy hurts the ability for families to grow and thrive. In fact, I had Jeff Degner on my show last year, and he wrote this like, you know, collegiate level like book on the effects of the inflation culture on families and stuff like that. I get that, but I also like want to push back against that and be like, yeah, it's a little tough, but also like I don't think that should mean that you shouldn't have kids. It's like, because
absolutely.
There's something like that actually accelerates the race to the bottom in this whole thing, I think. So
oh dude, let me, I'm glad you brought this topic up, because again, and I think actually what I was just saying transitions into this fairly well there, because there's nuance to this, man. There's a few different things that are going on at the same time, and I think it's really important to get. So like, number one, yes, it is absolutely true that the particularly the monetary policy of the government we live under, and then of course a lot of other factors, the fiscal policy and regulatory policy and stuff, but yes, they have driven the costs of like the basic building blocks of families up enormously. And the average first-time home buyer in America is 40 years old at this point. This is crazy. You cannot have a functioning, decent, moral society when young men have no avenue to buy a house. I mean, if you can't, like, that is just, that's the most basic thing that you need to have a moral society, is that young men got to be able to at least own a house, because then maybe they could like have a woman in that house and, you know, have kids with the same woman who's in that house. And like, is so, and then there's a ton more than that. And so like, it is absolutely true that lots of government policies have really made it much harder to achieve the most basic of what you would call the American dream, like owning your own house and having your own family and having your own little plot, your own little fiefdom, which, by the way, is more important than anything else in life. As anyone who knows anything, anyone with an ounce of wisdom will tell you, is actually the most important thing in life, is that you're able to like create your own little world, your own little family, your own little thing, be a really important figure in the people's lives who are with you every single day. And, you know, as you know, Jacob, me and you have talked about this many, many times before, but there's, you know, you got a whole bunch of kids, and I got a couple little kids, and every day, every single day, I just have the greatest thing that's ever happened in the history of the world happens in my house, like every day. Like today, I could give you like 5 moments. Like my 4-year-old runs into the other room where me and my wife and my daughter and my in-laws are, and he screams out that he has an announcement, but he can't say announcement because he's 4. So he says meowncement, and he just runs into the room and he goes, "Everybody, I have a meowncement. I'm putting on a show." And you're like, this is just the greatest thing I've ever seen in my life. Like, it's just so anyway, there's a real problem that the government has so screwed over the people that is so much more unachievable than ever before. Also, at the same time, if I'm being completely honest, if you live in the United States of America and you're a grown adult and you don't have $500 put away, a lot of that's on you.
Yeah.
Both of those things are true at the same time. What do you mean you don't have $500 put away? I mean, come on. Like, this is not being unreasonable. You live at a standard of life that my grandfather, like the person who doesn't have $500 put away, has so much of that is driven by the fact that there's incredible debt that all these people have because they have flat screen TVs and they have, you know what I mean? They have things that like you don't need at all. And look, maybe it's easy in my perspective, you know, from where I am to talk about this, but I remember talking about this when me and my wife first got together, and I was not making a lot of money at that time at all. I was just making a very reasonable amount of money, like a salary at a regular job, not a particularly good salary. And I was always like, as soon as we got together and we got married, and when she got pregnant and we were about to have a baby, I was like, look, I don't care if we're in a 1-bedroom apartment or a mansion. What matters is this. And there's so many people who, to your point of like, should you not have kids? I mean, come on, man. There are so many people, generations for thousands of years, had kids before you in situations that were so much dire than the situation you're in right now. And that's literally the reason you exist. The reason you exist is because someone else had a kid in a situation so much worse than you could imagine. Like on a dirt floor, on not even a dirt floor, on a grassy field. All of us are only here because someone had kids in a situation just you can't even imagine, up against a tree. You know what I mean? Like if you go back far enough. And so I just hate that stuff. The nerve of you to say that I get to stop at this point in the chain of this whole thing and go, no, it's too hard because the price of housing is high. You do whatever you got to do. You live above a garage, you live with your parents, you live with roommates, whatever, man. You keep this thing going. You have an obligation to do that. You have an obligation to do everything you can for the next generation.
I think Hoppa's 100% right when he talks about the time preference phenomenon in relation to this. And it's like, yeah, I get it. The inflationary culture of the Fed produces this high time preference economy and incentives, and it makes it harder. And guess what? You can either decide to just be a victim to that, or you can decide to defy that, and it's like, there's something, I know some libertarians hate to hear this message, but it's like, I believe it's true that when you decide to live the most degenerate lifestyle you can live, you're not, the state's happy with that. They're not threatened.
I completely
they are
agree.
Threatened by strong families and strong communities and strong churches.
Yes, I mean, come on, you got to admit it. Like that has been the popular culture for so long now. And there's a thing, because I've heard like Ben Shapiro and Mark Levin and some people like that have referred to me personally, and I guess when they refer to me, they're also referring to like, broadly speaking, like our camp, when they go, oh, you're like the grievance, the grievance right. And there is, you go like, look, first of all, every political camp has grievances. Everyone has grievances. Otherwise you wouldn't be politically active at all if you didn't have grievances. So there's something unfair about that. But
complaining about grievance politics is in itself grievance.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yes, it is. That is a very good point. It is like a self-contradictory, position to take. But so the point is that, okay, so yeah, of course, obviously we do have grievances, but there's no reason why you can't have that and also go, yeah, there are pitfalls to like falling into, feeling bad for yourself or something like that. And so, okay, we've got a particular set of challenges in front of us as a society, and young people, I certainly try to speak up as much as I can about the fact that I think it's crazy that there's a young guy, young men right now in your 20s. I mean, to make a salary of like 70 or 80K a year still today is like, you got to kind of be established and have a decent job for that. Young men, someone 25 who's just like trying to figure out what they can do, that's a daunting challenge to get to that level. And that level is pretty damn hard to support a family at. And so there's no question that like, that's a real problem. Also, like the answer if you're a 25-year-old is not to start feeling sorry for yourself. It's to start going, okay, all right, how do I put this together? How do I make this happen? And, there's been people I bring up a lot because we're, me and you were talking about the Mises caucus and all this, but Ludwig von Mises himself, like he was like run out of Europe and had his library burned down and had this crazy story. He came here. He published, if I'm getting this right. I think he published Human Action after he came here. He published books that were not in his original language that are like to this day, and like, I don't know. People went through way worse than whatever you're going through. So, okay. The problems are real. It sucks. And now get on with it.
Yeah. No, I think that's exactly right. Let's get through the rest of these quick. Where were we? What is it with people named Austin the Liberty Sphere being absolutely all on four paws? I don't know, man. That's a conspiracy theory for you.
Well, that is something we're gonna have to get to the bottom of that at some point.
Yes. Philip, have you ever been to 1930s Germany? No, I have not, but I don't think Douglas Murray's been to Iran. So,
that is unfortunate.
Yep. Didn't help when he went to Ukraine, though. That didn't give him any special knowledge.
Well, they still might win. Give him time. Let him cook.
Oh gosh. Proud to see Luis J. Gomez bravely oppose war. Thank you for that, Phil.
I am too.
Michael, again, $10. I regret to inform you that I, a radical Hoppian, am in fact a leftist, according to James Lindsay, for not being pro-Israel class. Listen, I tried to give James Lindsay so much rope. I even had him on my show, and had like a half. But it's just like at some point, especially right now, it's just like. It's just so obvious what he's doing, and it's also just I'm sorry, I'm gonna go off here like that. This whole thing that like, Hoppe was talking about things that Marx got right about class theory, so that makes Hoppe a Marxist and woke right. And I'm just like, I mean, first of all, not only does class theory predate Marx, but it's just like, what are you just saying that anytime you have any sort of model for society where like there are people with power who are, manipulating or oppressing people below them, that's critical theory and that's wokeism, and just like, all right, so like, what were the abolitionists woke? Like, it's so dumb.
It's so dumb, dude. I mean, I remember when because they just brought up Austin Peterson, but when I debated him, and it was like, I think pretty shortly after October 7th, it was like, I want to say late 23 or something like that. And he goes, wait a minute, dude. So you're saying like the Israels are the oppressors and the Palestinians are the oppressed. So that's critical theory, man. And I'm like, wait, what? Like, no, critical theory is the idea that everything is seen through the lens of oppressor and oppressed.
Right.
If you ever think anyone is oppressed, that doesn't are you saying you believe no one is ever oppressed? Like, because that's like the inverse of critical theory, which is equally retarded. So right. What are you saying? Like, and there is something with guys like James Lindsay. There's been a few of them now for me, where I mean, James Lindsay has probably trashed me like hundreds of times at this point, tweets at me all the time, and it's always kind of like trying to get a reaction out of me. There's also like Mark Levin and Ben Shapiro and Sam Harris and Gad Saad. And there's just a whole bunch. There's like a whole long list of people who like have had all these things to say. And then my response is always like, hey, come on my podcast tomorrow. Hey, come on. And then they go, oh, you're a debate me, bro. I won't debate you. So you're like, oh, so, okay, so you just won't actually take on the argument, but you'll spend a fair amount of time talking about it. Oh, like, okay, fair enough. But then James Lindsay will like specifically go, no, I'm not taking on any of their arguments. I'm just here to mock them, as he gets ratioed on every post. And so like there's this very weird thing where you're like, okay, so you're saying you're not here to take on the argument, you're just here to like do like a social psychological thing where you go, I'm gonna mock you and have people laughing at you. And like to all of those people, I'm kind of like, okay, but
he's
actually just like look at the numbers. I promise you, I'm gonna have a lot more people laughing at you.
Yeah, people are laughing.
Like,
they're not yeah.
Yeah, so like it's like, okay, so that's your strategy. Like, don't get me wrong, all of the people I named would get in a lot of trouble if they ever did come debate me, because and then they have all this, they go, oh, you just want to debate so you can farm clips. But yes, that's right. Like, it's going to create some clips that people are going to share all over the place, because you're going to get embarrassed if you try to bring these nonsense arguments. Yeah, if you try to bring to a debate with me or you, Jacob, that Hans Hermann Hoppe is basically a leftist because he said Marx has had some points about his class theory. Okay, bring that to a debate and let's see how well that does. Right. There's a reason you don't want to ever actually have a conversation or be on a podcast or be in a debate with anyone. And then, okay, so yeah, you're going to sit here and say you're trying to make everyone laugh at us. Meanwhile, objectively, you see Liam McCullum just ratioing Mark Levin, ratioing the shit out of him. It's like,
I hope Liam's doing okay, by the way. I hope he found a job after being let go by the Blaze.
That was tough. It was tough. It was a big deal for us. It was a big deal for us to have our young star, Liam, up on the Blaze. And then to see Mark Levin just tear that away from poor young sweet Liam was not cool. But just the thing is, like, come on, what are you guys doing, dude? Like, it doesn't even make any sense. It's like, dude, you're losing the Twitter war. You're losing the avoiding a debate war. You'd obviously lose the debate war, which is why you won't do that. That's why you'd lose that much worse. So just shut up. So just go, you know what I mean? Like, why even do it? It's very strange to me.
Yeah. AT Alien, $5. Dave, you should commit one episode of POTP episode a month to talk about economy. Okay. Yeah,
Michael, maybe I should.
I've seen some people say, which I think this is tough when you're in interviews and it's kind of like Monday morning quarterbacking, but they'll be like, oh man, I wish when he was on Tucker, he would have brought up economics a bit more, because that's one of those things now where it's
I brought up economics a lot on the last Tucker. I challenged him I told him I was furious at him for saying Lindsey Graham believed in Austrian economics. I got into a whole thing about monetary policy. Look, man, those criticisms, I will say, and I remember from what I watched even of the Zulu video and from what I listened to of his fans, I'll say, look, there's a lot of fair criticisms of how I'm doing at this. I mean, geez, I got thrown into a position here that is a little bit nuts. And so look, there's a lot of, and one of the criticisms that I think I really took to heart, or maybe two criticisms that I really took to heart, were that while I have planted my flag as the Ron Paul libertarian guy and made it very clear on the biggest platforms that means the anti-war guy, I don't know if I've done a good enough job of also making it clear that means the end the Fed guy and the, laissez-faire free market economics, and then really explain that with as compelling of a pitch as I could. And then, so that's one fair criticism. And then the other fair criticism, I think, is that while maybe I've got too caught up in counter signaling the left and the open borders libertarians, or the woke, goofy libertarians, or whatever as I call them, maybe I don't do enough of a good job in really pitching, like the vision of a free society. And that's what I'm really standing for. Like, Ron Paul always did a much better job than I have. Look, he did a much better job than I do at everything, but he did a much better job at like always tying everything back to like, but this is the vision that we could just be a free society, and we could, and really kind of spelling out what that means. And so those two have really hit home with me. Maybe I can do a better job at those. Also, I would just say, as you were kind of getting at, it's a lot easier to sit back and say how someone should do something more perfect than to do it. And I am working through the limitations of just being who I am at the same time too. I don't know. I get in a conversation with Tucker and we're talking about the war in Iran, and then I got so much stuff to say about that I end up talking about that for a while. It's not that easy to always, make sure you hit the perfect balance of everything. It is a challenge.
No, I get it. I get, I have a much smaller platform, but I get even feedback from people I know, and they'll say I get too, there's always things that like you're going to leave, even if you have a debate or a podcast that goes really well, there's going to be things that you look back and go, oh, I left that on the table.
Yep.
I could have responded.
Every time. Yeah.
Like, heck, this podcast, which this will have to be more of a conversation for next time I have you on, like one of the things I wanted to talk to you about was like, it's very tough, I think, to be, because I've heard you talk about this on several shows. I think you talked about it with Emily, you talked about it when you were on with Cenk, but just like the caring about the culture war, but not becoming a useful idiot for the culture war.
Yeah.
On things like that. Because like it's like on one hand, like some of those things are like real issues. And on the other hand, it's like, yeah, but I also know that like when politicians try to drum us up into a frenzy about this, it's like, well, they don't, for the most part, actually care about those issues. They're just trying to get us all to be fighting each other while we while we continue to do all the things that horrible things that we do agree need to stop. So it's a it's a tough thing. Last super chat here from Michael. Dave, you should go on Are You Smarter Than a Politician? It would be a great show.
I don't know that.
It's a libertarian game show. It's just for bragging rights, but I've been on it a few times. It's Scott's been on it before. They're good guys over there. You should.
All right. Well, those are two good recommendations, you and Scott.
Yeah, they're good guys. It's a lot of fun. It's kind of like just a libertarian powwow. So, so anyway, thank you, Dave, for being here. Thank you, everyone, for watching and in the comments. I also am just going to plug one more time. I think I've been posting about this now for like a month now, but my son is still in the competition to be the 2026 Junior Ranger. That's through the Ranger Rick magazine organization. But anyway, he's up for like this competition to win like $20,000 and go on this like really cool trip. And I'm like super proud of him. I'm super proud of him. He got through like the first round of competition and all that, and he's still in like second place. So if everyone can still continue to vote for him once a day to help give him the best chance possible, I really appreciate that. Like, what am I going to do? Have a platform and not try to support my kid and one of the coolest things that ever happened to him. It's really cool that he even just made it this far, but I think he's got a good chance. So anyway, thanks, Dave, for being on here. Thanks for everything you do. Thanks everybody for listening. And any closing thoughts or
no, dude, I always enjoy talking to you so much. Thank you so much. And thank you for everyone for listening. Yeah. And good luck to your boy.
Thanks. Appreciate it. All right. That's it, everyone. Talk to you next time. Oh yeah. Next Monday, Daryl Cooper. Tune in for that.